Chapter 11:20. Watching Kiki enter the garden, Poplar Fruit still felt inexplicably sad, even though he would be able to see the cute and naughty little girl again in a few hours. After sending Poplar Fruit's parents home, he didn't have much to do. The semester hadn't started yet, so Poplar Fruit went to pick up a package and went to Fong Beibei's pet hospital to help. Fong Beibei had been spending a lot of time at the pet hospital recently, mainly to settle down a new batch of stray cats and dogs waiting for adoption. She also led the hospital's copywriters to record the files of these children. "What is this?" Seeing the big boss come in, the copywriter looked curiously at the express delivery box in his hands and asked, "Books." Poplar Fruit laughed. He turned his head and looked at Fong Beibei, who was wearing a white coat. "Baby, give me a paper cutter." Fong Beibei handed it to him. Like the copywriter, she pressed down on her knees and leaned over to look curiously at Poplar Fruit opening the package on the ground. In the box were 9 paperback books with beautiful covers. The copywriter and Fong Beibei had a hard time reading them, because they were all written in English. However, Fong Beibei quickly guessed what these books were. "Uncle, are these your books?" "The Theory of Word Splitting," Fong Beibei asked happily. "Didn't you say that it was only officially published today?" Poplar Fruit smiled and nodded. "It was only published today, but this is the first edition. The people in Beijing sent it directly to me before it was released." "Big boss, did you write all of these?" The copywriter knew that her boss was very good. There was no lack of news about Poplar Fruit on the internet, but seeing was better than hearing about it. There were so many English books, and they were all written by the big boss. That was too awesome. "Don't worship me too much. I'm just a legend." Poplar Fruit chuckled. He and Fong Beibei moved the books to the dean's office. They would take them back when they returned. "The country is still too stingy." Poplar Fruit curled his lips and said to Fong Beibei. In addition to the English version, Poplar Fruit had also translated several mainstream languages around the world. This was not a difficult task for Poplar Fruit. After all, he had written the book himself. Poplar Fruit knew every sentence and word in the book like the back of his hand. Poplar Fruit was able to translate it after spending a bit of his sleepless night. And this was free labor. Even if they made money, the country probably did not intend to give Poplar Fruit a share. Or perhaps the country did not intend to make money at all. For this kind of cultural promotion book, the country would probably be willing to pay for it. "All right, I've already left a big name for you on the cover of the book. Isn't that enough?" Fong Beibei said cheerfully. Indeed, when Poplar Fruit saw his name, English name, Lian Yang, as the sole author, placed on the cover of every book, it was a great satisfaction for Poplar Fruit. Although there were many famous old professors in the editorial team, there was no doubt that the author of the book, the inventor of the theory, was Poplar Fruit. The old professors were noble, and did not covet the honor that belonged to Poplar Fruit. Not only that, but there was also a brief introduction of Poplar Fruit at the back. Was this not a recognition of him? However, because of Kiki, Poplar Fruit did not pay much attention to his book today. He chatted with Fong Beibei, and the topic returned to Kiki. "This girl's heart is too big. When she goes to kindergarten, the other children are crying, but she's different. She's still smiling." Poplar Fruit curled his lips and said. Fong Beibei covered her mouth and laughed. She said, "How can a father be like you? Isn't it good that your daughter doesn't cry? Yesterday, you were worried that Kiki would refuse to go to kindergarten." Poplar Fruit sighed and said, "That's true, but when I saw that the girl didn't cry, I felt quite bad." "You feel that you're not that important in Kiki's heart, so you're disappointed, right?" Fong Beibei said to Poplar Fruit as she wrote on her tablet. Poplar Fruit nodded honestly. "No, you're thinking too much." Fong Beibei lifted the naughty bangs on her forehead and laughed. "In fact, Kiki still cares about you. Did you forget that Kiki asked if you would pick her up at night? It's because of your promise that she can go to kindergarten so easily." "That's true." Poplar Fruit nodded. In fact, Kiki was not as strong as Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei thought. After 2 hours, she couldn't sit still in the kindergarten. She missed her father and mother very much. In the past, even if Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei went to class and left her at Grandma Chen's house, it would only take 1 or 2 hours. At noon, they would still come to pick Kiki up. Fortunately, the kindergarten teachers were better at coaxing children. They quickly used more interesting games to divert the attention of the gradually restless children. However, Kiki's temper after waking up from her afternoon nap was something that even the most experienced kindergarten teacher couldn't appease. At 3 o'clock, the kindergarten teachers really couldn't do anything about Kiki, who had been crying for more than half an hour. The little girl also successfully infected her mood of missing her father to other children, making the children in the kindergarten cry. Poplar Fruit received the phone call. His first reaction was joy. This girl finally wanted her father. His second reaction was anxiety. Poplar Fruit was so anxious that he wanted to drive to see his daughter immediately. However, Fong Bebe stopped him. This is a stage that Kiki has to go through. Fong Bebe shook her head and looked at Poplar Fruit. She said, "If you go, what about in the future? Will you go every time? Can Kiki still go to kindergarten alone?" Poplar Fruit was silent for a while. Then he decided to only appease the little girl over the phone. Fong Bebe was right. Kiki had to learn to reduce her dependence on her father. Although Poplar Fruit was very reluctant and didn't feel right, Poplar Fruit knew that it was for the good of his daughter. This whole day, Poplar Fruit was absent-minded. His daughter's first day of kindergarten was also a torture for him as a father. In the afternoon, when he was boiling soup at home, Poplar Fruit almost forgot to put something in it to boil. It took a long time before he remembered. For Chef Yang, this was the first time he encountered such a situation. Although he was on time, Poplar Fruit still arrived at the entrance of the kindergarten half an hour early. After waiting for a long time, he finally saw the beautiful little girl in the noisy group of children. "Kiki." Poplar Fruit called out and strode over. "Papa." Kiki cheered and threw herself into Poplar Fruit's arms. After saying goodbye to the teacher and the new friends, Kiki could finally go home with her father. Along the way, the little girl couldn't sit still in Fong Bebe's arms. She kept pulling her father's driver's seat and talking to him. "Papa, Kiki told you that many children in the kindergarten speak English, but there are a few children who don't know how to speak it." "Papa, Kiki met a lot of friends today. Papa just met Anderson and Michelle, but there's also..." "Papa, Papa." As soon as the lark opened its mouth, the sweet song could no longer be stopped. Poplar Fruit listened carefully and smiled. It was as if he had come to a vast grassland with blue sky, white clouds, and continuous green grass. His mood was just right. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 11:21. In the blink of an eye, September had passed. In the past September, Poplar Fruit's time was basically spent shuttling between various cities. Basically, Poplar Fruit would be out for 4 days every week, and only 3 days at home. Of course, Kiki wasn't very satisfied. In the first 2 weeks, she often complained that her father wasn't home. However, this couldn't be helped. Therefore, Kiki cherished the time she could spend with her father more and more. On the weekends, she didn't pester her father to go anywhere. Being able to play with her father at home was the greatest happiness. Of course, the popular, "Where are we going, Dad?" was also an eternal weekend program at home. Poplar Fruit would generally decline social engagements, other chores, and the work at hand to accompany his daughter and girlfriend to watch TV. In 1 month, Poplar Fruit gave 20 speeches in 8 cities, sometimes 2 a day. This was an incredible number for many people. And even for Poplar Fruit, it was not a small challenge. However, Poplar Fruit gritted his teeth and persevered. 20 speeches said about the same content. Poplar Fruit went from being disgusted to being numb. This could be considered as advancing from a rookie to a qualified speaker. There was still a certain distance between him and a speaker. However, it was undeniable that Poplar Fruit's progress was very obvious. After every speech, Poplar Fruit had been summarizing his gains and losses. The notebook was full of notes, and even the mistakes he made in that second were recorded. A strong memory was willful. Every night, he took time to think about how to improve the content of his speech. In any case, he had countless real materials and expressions in his mind for him to choose from. In this way, every day, little by little, Poplar Fruit gradually improved from being able to arouse the enthusiasm of fans who love public welfare, or himself to being able to influence the emotions of students who didn't know, didn't care, and just came to watch. This was already not simple. One had to know how difficult it was for someone who was not enthusiastic about public welfare to abandon their prejudices and sacrifice their time to invest in public welfare. Of course, Poplar Fruit couldn't do it now, but he was improving. Moreover, he was reading some historical materials and learning how to stir up emotions from the speeches of historical figures. In any case, he wasn't doing anything crooked. Calling on capable and ambitious university students to donate some of their spare time from playing games or daydreaming to support the development of poor areas was a good thing. It was a good thing that reflected social fairness and the kindness and love of young people. Even though it wasn't the ideal situation, Yang Guo was happy to see that after every speech, all the students were willing to stand up and applaud for him. The applause lasted for a long time, and the discussion with the students wasn't finished yet. Perhaps after a speech, although only a few dozen people would be willing to join the charity team of remote teaching, which was far from enough, as long as the remaining few hundred people were willing to pass on Poplar Fruit's speech to their friends, and let more people know about remote teaching, more members would join. This was the so-called, a single spark can start a prairie fire. After September, Poplar Fruit was really tired. There were classes every week and some translation work. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit welcomed a small long holiday in October. During the week of National Day, Poplar Fruit did not need to go out and run around. He also did not need to busy himself with school matters and his studies. During the holidays, Poplar Fruit brought Kiki to Changlong, but not to Yangqing's Changlong. Although Yangqing's Changlong was popular because of the movie, Where Are We Going, Daddy? There were too many people during the holidays. Poplar Fruit drove Fang Beibei and Kiki to Zhucheng, where a new Changlong amusement park was built a few years ago. Zhucheng's Changlong was not worse than Yangqing's. There was an ocean kingdom there. Other than looking at whales and sharks through the glass windows in the underwater tunnel, Kiki was the happiest when she went on the water roller coaster. Sitting on the water roller coaster, passing through the floating ice in the polar region, she could even wave at the silly polar bear. There was also the International Circus City. It happened to be National Day, and the Circus City invited circuses from all over the world to perform for the audience. For 4 consecutive nights, Poplar Fruit and the rest enjoyed the gold medal performances of France's Tomorrow and the Future, Morocco's Monte Carlo International Circus Festival, Moscow International Circus Festival, and other circuses from all over the world. Chi-Chi, on the other hand, didn't miss a single show. She would yell and support every show like a little movie fan, wishing that she could go down there and play with these cute seals, fierce lions, and stupid zebras. The place to stay was chosen by Kiki. There were many theme hotels in Changlong, such as the dolphin-themed Hengqin Bay Hotel and the European-style Circus Hotel. In the end, Kiki chose the cute penguin-themed hotel. In the blue-toned room, not only was the wallpaper inside, even the wardrobe and chairs looked like penguins. There was also an iceberg-like slide in the room. Although the slide was not new, Kiki still had fun playing with it after changing into the penguin pajamas she bought in the hotel lobby. Of course, Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei also changed into penguin pajamas. At night, when Kiki was tired from playing, the penguin father and mother would hold the penguin doll and sleep comfortably in the ocean ship in the Antarctic. Oh yes, there were also a lot of shrimp, crab, and starfish pillows. At this time, Changlong Pearl City was not as popular as other scenic spots. In addition, most of the tourists who came to Pearl City eventually went to Macau. Therefore, Yang Guo and the others enjoyed a holiday where they did not have to look at the sea of people. Of course, the cost was not small. For 4 days of hotel expenses, ticket expenses, and other expenses, Poplar Fruit roughly calculated that it cost at least 20,000 yuan. It's 21,773 yuan. Fang Beibei calculated the most accurately. It doesn't matter. The most important thing is to have fun, Kiki, right? Poplar Fruit said with a smile. He looked through the rearview mirror at Kiki, who was still leaning against the window and looking at Pearl City that was gradually getting farther and farther away. Kiki turned to look at her father and responded crisply, "Yes." Fang Beibei also asked with a smile, "Then will Kiki come here to play in the future?" Kiki's eyes were bright, and she nodded vigorously. No one knew how happy she was. When they went back, the mood of the family was like the blue and clean sky of Pearl City. Yangqing seemed to be affected by Kiki's happiness, and flowers were everywhere. In the autumn of the Southern Kingdom, everything did not wither, but became more and more lively. Of course, after the short break, Poplar Fruit had to devote himself to the intensive speech schedule. This time, Poplar Fruit wanted to let all the colleges and universities that he went to enthusiastically throw themselves into this epic-making education reform for public welfare. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Chapter 1122. In October, not long after the National Day, this year's Nobel Prize in Literature was finally announced. The French novelist Patrick Modiano won the long-distance race. This great writer, known as one of the three masters of contemporary French writers in France, was not very famous in China. Even if he won the award, it did not cause any waves in China. The sales of his works later proved this point. The Nobel Prize in Literature winning Dark Shop Street and Sunday in August had been sold by Yilin Publishing for 7 years. Including 2015, after the award, the sales of these two works in China were not as high as the sales of any of Monroe's short story collections in 2014. The quality of the novel was originally very good. Poplar Fruit had read the original book, but as the netizens on Douban commented, the Chinese translation was terrible. Poplar Fruit felt that the new translation Road Publishing House could find a mediocre translator to translate these hundreds of thousands of words better than it. It was a pity for Modiano. Of course, Poplar Fruit could not do anything about it. After all, New Translation Road Publishing House did not pay attention to the introduction of foreign books this time. It was normal for Yilin to seize the opportunity. Of course, the Nobel Prize winner this year was not famous. The main reason was that there were no Chinese elements in it like in the previous 2 years. In 2012, teacher Mo Yan won the award, and the 2013 winner's work was also translated by a Chinese Poplar Fruit. There were also netizens who teased, saying that Poplar Fruit had expected that this year's Nobel Prize winner would not do well, so he did not get involved. At a glance, it was obvious that they were not hardcore fans of Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit's hardcore fans all knew that Poplar Fruit was very busy. Furthermore, Poplar Fruit had devoted most of his energy this year to public welfare and Chinese teaching theory. In particular, the global promotion of Poplar Fruit's word-splitting teaching theory was a national project. Poplar Fruit led all the great scholars in the Chinese literature world as the only author. This made many Poplar Fruit fans puff out their chests proudly. Our Appa is handsome and has long legs. His love for his daughter and girlfriend is warm and faithful. He is also good at both civil and martial arts. Which one of your Appas can compare to him? A netizen's words resonated with many people. In the past, when I chased after celebrities, my mother didn't allow it. Only Poplar Fruit Appa was different. My mother even encouraged me to chase after celebrities. She even used her connections to get me to listen to Poplar Fruit Appa's lectures. The way he gave a serious speech was so handsome, okay? It had to be said that Poplar Fruit had indeed become a role model for more and more parents to educate their children. Although Poplar Fruit's achievements were mainly in the macro aspect, it did not prevent fans from worshipping Poplar Fruit. Of course, whether it was positive or negative, it didn't affect Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit had never held a cram school on Weibo just because he was called a role model by many mothers. For example, he answered some homework questions from fans. He also didn't talk about parenting skills every day just because he often posted pictures of his daughter. In short, Poplar Fruit was such a low-key person and frivolously posted pictures of his daughter. Unfortunately, Poplar Fruit and Kiki's fans liked this. Therefore, Poplar Fruit's fans had been increasing occasionally, but most of the time it was increasing slowly. In late October, Poplar Fruit came to Beijing, which had the largest number of students. He would give as many as 10 speeches here. The first one he came to was Beijing University. Of course, Poplar Fruit could now control the rhythm of his speeches very well, and his performance was very exciting. Especially at the end, when Poplar Fruit waved his hand and asked how many people were willing to share their 1 or 2 hours of free time a week to have a beautiful encounter with poor and backward people that they didn't know at all. The whole audience raised their hands. This made Poplar Fruit feel touched, but it was not new. What really surprised Poplar Fruit was that after the speech, a black exchange student came from behind and wanted to communicate with him. The other party's Chinese was very awkward, but it was still within the range of communication. Poplar Fruit was surprised to find that the other party was not an American, but a black person from the African continent. International exchange students were not rare. Higashiyama University had many, but most of the students came from rich countries. Beijing University reflected the difference between Higashiyama University and Beijing University. For example, this black student came from Tanzania, a country that was far more poor and backward than the Chinese people could imagine. This black student from Tanzania was very interested in the long-distance education that Poplar Fruit talked about. Poplar Fruit did not know much about Tanzania, but some information was enough for Poplar Fruit to have a discussion with this black student. Tanzania was one of the least developed countries in the world announced by the United Nations. The economy was mainly agricultural, and they were basically self-sufficient. However, it was a country that placed the most importance on education. Like China, it implemented compulsory education from primary to secondary school. Other than private schools, most of the public schools were free of charge. The literacy rate was as high as 90%, and it was one of the countries with the lowest illiteracy rate in Africa. Since the education level in your country is okay, why are you interested in long-distance education? Poplar Fruit asked curiously. This black student's Chinese was awkward, but it was not bad. Poplar Fruit tried to communicate with him in English, but he could not understand what the other party was saying. His mother tongue, Kiswahili, was quite good, but the problem was that Poplar Fruit did not know it. It seemed that he had to learn more African languages in the future. Now, Poplar Fruit's language level was enough to travel around the world, but there were many native languages in Africa that he had not learned. The black student said as he gestured with his hands to chat with Yang Gua. Poplar Fruit then understood that he was not thinking about the education situation in Tanzania, but was worried about the education situation in his home country, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. A home country? It turned out that the black student's parents fled to Tanzania during a civil strife. At that time, the black student was still young, but he was still concerned about his home country. Poplar Fruit then understood that in the Congo, there were too many children who did not go to school, accounting for 6% of the total population, and their education was destroyed by civil strife and conflict again and again. Of course, since the 21st century, the political situation had stabilized a lot, but the development of education was still very slow. You're right, if the young are strong, then China will be strong. Poplar Fruit wanted to correct him that this was not his original idea, but the black student said sincerely, "Our Tanzania's education level has improved, and now the development has caught up, but my home country is still behind, and there are even many people living in ignorant indigenous groups. I hope to help my home country bring about change, using your long-distance teaching." Although he could not bear to reject the other party's hopeful eyes, Poplar Fruit had to pour cold water on the black student. "Mukaru, dreams are beautiful, but reality is cruel. Sai, think about it, even if there is long-distance teaching, how many children in Africa can use a computer? Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations." Chapter 1123. The black man from Tanzania, Mukaru, wanted to learn from Poplar Fruit's method after listening to Poplar Fruit's speech. He wanted to become the savior of Congo's underprivileged children. However, it was obvious that this idea was too much to take for granted. Whether it was Congo or Tanzania, they did not have the conditions to implement high-tech education. The reason why the poor areas in China could popularize modern classrooms was because they had the support of a large number of wealthy cities, which allowed them to have sufficient financial support to carry out reforms. Moreover, China's relatively stable situation and relatively safe public security environment were also important factors that allowed remote teaching to be popularized. Think about it. In a chaotic country like Congo, where the average annual income was less than 1,000 yuan, if any family had an expensive computer, wouldn't it be equivalent to activating a taunting halo? Robbery was a light punishment. It was already fortunate that they were not killed and robbed. However, Poplar Fruit did not have the heart to pour cold water on Mukaru. He chatted with him for a long time, and even asked him to teach him Kiswahili, which slightly soothed the black man's depressed mood. It could not be helped. Although Poplar Fruit also wanted to help him, the cruel reality was there. Poplar Fruit was not a god who could turn stone into gold. After arriving in Beijing, Poplar Fruit diligently went to the Ministry of Education a few times, and also went to the Confucius Institute's Beijing headquarters. Poplar Fruit's new Chinese teaching method had been promoted all over the world. Of course, the Confucius Institute was the main one. After all, only the country could spread it all over the world in just a few months. The professors at the headquarters happily told Poplar Fruit that the response to the method was very good. It allowed many foreign learners to experience the joy of learning Chinese. Of course, this joy was relative. It was very difficult to be happy with learning. However, compared to the suffering in the past, the relaxation now was a rare joy. Poplar Fruit also had a bad mouth. He happily suggested, "Why don't we record it as a video? Just like university public classes, use video mode to promote it. Maybe more people will be able to see it." Yes, video promotion. In the past, video teaching only existed in VCD players, and the effect was not that obvious. However, things were different now. Other than computers, there were also mobile phones, tablets, carriers, and software that had been upgraded. In addition, YouTube was a video website with a strong influence around the world. It would definitely be more popular than the Confucius Institute, which was limited by geography. The professor who listened to Poplar Fruit's advice was only in his 40s. He was very young, and his understanding of modern equipment was no worse than Poplar Fruit's. Moreover, he had a child who was already in school. The reading machine at home had been played with a lot of tricks. He immediately realized that this suggestion was very good, and there was a lot of room for improvement. It should be noted that video teaching was no longer just video teaching. With Poplar Fruit's remote teaching, the video teaching software had been upgraded and enhanced the interactive experience of video teaching. Perhaps with the software, Chinese teaching would become even more interesting, and allow more people around the world to come into contact with and be willing to learn Chinese. If it was a company, no one would be willing to be a spendthrift who would give others a free meal. However, the country was different. The promotion of the Chinese language and the dissemination of traditional Chinese culture was a strategic decision of the country, regardless of whether the country was willing to do free promotion. If more people were willing to learn and understand Chinese and Chinese, the country would be willing to pay for it. Regardless of how the video teaching would be, the software would be more diverse and interesting. This was what the technical staff needed to think about. What Poplar Fruit needed to do was to record all these video teaching videos. That's right. Poplar Fruit had been cheated by the leaders of the Confucius Institute. The other party had given Poplar Fruit the position of deputy director, and there was no administrative title. They had asked Poplar Fruit to boldly try. Poplar Fruit needed to go back and record a few Chinese teaching videos before putting them on the internet to test the waters. Testing the waters meant that it did not matter if it did not succeed. There was no cost for failure. However, if it succeeded, Poplar Fruit would have to continue recording. The reason for letting Poplar Fruit test the waters was also quite noble. For example, this was an idea proposed by Poplar Fruit, or this was a new theory invented by Poplar Fruit. More importantly, Poplar Fruit was more famous abroad. The response to his videos would definitely be much better than others. In any case, Poplar Fruit still took on this heavy responsibility. Although it would be very tiring for him to record a Chinese teaching video when he was already very busy, it was still a theory that he had researched himself. Just like Kiki, if he was a little tired and did a little more for her, what was there to complain about? What surprised Yanghua was the reaction of one of the leaders of the Ministry of Education when he talked about Mukaru. The leader had a good relationship with Uncle Jean of the Ministry of Education in Guangdong. Poplar Fruit only mentioned it as something new. He did not expect the other party to be so serious. He carefully asked about Mukaru's thoughts and Poplar Fruit's opinion on this matter. "Mr. Ma, this is not realistic," Poplar Fruit said with a bitter smile. Think about it, a country like Congo, not to mention the chaos, the country's development mainly depends on agriculture and mining. Where would they get the equipment? Where would the internet come from? This chat did not last long. However, Poplar Fruit did not expect that a few days later, Poplar Fruit would come to Beijing again. Mr. Ma called Poplar Fruit over again. This time, there were some leaders from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and some leaders that Poplar Fruit was not familiar with. Poplar Fruit, what do you think the possibility of Mokara's idea being realized is? One of the leaders asked. Poplar Fruit honestly repeated his previous concerns. He went back to learn Kiswahili, and also studied the current situation of Tanzania and Congo. The latter was much bigger than Tanzania. It was the second largest country in Africa, and the 11th largest in the world. The main language was French. Therefore, Poplar Fruit obtained more information. It was also because of this understanding that Poplar Fruit felt that the possibility was very small. What if we don't consider safety, equipment, and internet? The leader asked. These are issues that the country needs to consider. And they are not considered problems. Poplar Fruit was not stupid. The leader did not say it directly, but he still understood what the other party meant. This was related to China's layout in Africa. Just like in the past, including the current African aid projects. For the future, the country would not be stingy with these seemingly useless aid. Since Poplar Fruit did not need to worry about these factors that were difficult for him to eliminate, then perhaps this idea could really be realized. Poplar Fruit's brain started to work quickly, looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Chapter 1124. For example, we can set up a lot of education bases similar to medical centers in Congo, or we can simply combine them with medical centers and have stationed troops to help protect them. Poplar Fruit happily expressed his opinions and ideas. Then we can let local African students or students studying in China, together with student volunteers with foreign language skills in our country, provide teaching support for their out-of-school children through the remote teaching platform. As long as the children and women nearby are willing, they can come over to learn. Poplar Fruit said, we don't need to provide too advanced teaching content because their current education level is too low. Most people are ignorant and what they need the most is to eliminate illiteracy and enlightenment. Needless to say, the initiation and coordination of remote teaching for more than 2 years gave Poplar Fruit a deep understanding of the education model. Just by brainstorming on the spot, Poplar Fruit could say a lot of things. The conversation with the senior management lasted all day and Poplar Fruit was only able to leave in the evening. However, he still had to organize the things he said into a report and submit it to the leaders. However, compared to the difficulty of the plan, Poplar Fruit did not have to work hard to compile the report that had already formed in his mind. Poplar Fruit did not need to worry about how to carry out the plan, because this was a problem that the country's foreign affairs personnel should think about. They might promote the development of remote teaching through cooperation between countries, or they might use Mokara's special identity, both countries were his motherland, to logically implement the plan. However, Poplar Fruit did not need to worry about this. What did Poplar Fruit need to do? It seemed like there was really nothing to do. Maybe he needed to learn the native language of Africa, then record some Chinese teaching videos. The country's support for education in African countries must be mixed with some private goods, such as Chinese cultural education. No matter what, this was good news for the kind-hearted Mukulu. Regardless of whether China had any private goods or not, when a country was extremely poor, they could only sacrifice some things to gain opportunities for development. This was the sad reality of most African countries. In fact, wasn't China the same in the past? With China's help, at least it was better. At least it was not like those vampire-like capitalists who really dug 3 feet into the ground. There was no need to explain too much about this matter. After all, it had risen to the level of the country, and was beyond the scope of Poplar Fruit's consideration. What should Poplar Fruit consider? Of course, it's the cutest little student in our kindergarten, Kiki. Since the little fellow went to kindergarten, she had experienced more and more new things, especially the interesting things with her good friends. She was happy during the day and talked to Poplar Fruit nonstop when she came back at night. If Poplar Fruit wasn't at home, Kiki would talk to her father on the phone while eating breakfast. Poplar Fruit usually didn't have time to answer the phone at night, because by the time the speech was over, it was time for Kiki to go to bed. She had to tell her father everything that the teacher said in the kindergarten, the scene of playing games with the children, and the handwork that the teacher taught her, no matter how big or small. This also made Fong Beibei, who was waiting to talk to Poplar Fruit, feel a little jealous. She pouted and said sourly, "Humph, now I'm relying on you, you should just enjoy it. Wait until later, when you're all grown up and run away with other boys, I'll see how you cry." Fong Beibei didn't know that Poplar Fruit secretly called Kiki's performance a happy annoyance. After all, the little fellow's memory was too good. For the whole day, she could remember every word that everyone said to her. Therefore, in a situation where she didn't know how to make a long story short and not say anything short, Chi-Chi and Yongguo would go on and on endlessly. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit had a role model to teach Kiki. "Kiki, look at Sister Belle." After going back to watch the second season of Where Are We Going, Daddy with Kiki, plot required, Poplar Fruit began to find an opportunity to talk to Kiki. "I like Sister Duo and Brother Feynman," Kiki said. Since she started kindergarten, Kiki's biggest change was the budding of her independent consciousness. It wasn't that she didn't rely on Poplar Fruit, but that she gradually had self-awareness in terms of language. In the past, she had always referred to herself as Chi-Chi. It wasn't that this was bad, and it sounded very cute, but compared to her rapidly developing intelligence, Chi-Chi's mind was still stuck at the same age as her own. In fact, because she could act coquettishly and shamelessly in front of her father, Kiki didn't have any intention of growing up. Poplar Fruit didn't have any concerns in this regard. In fact, 2 to 3 years old children were enough to have their own independent consciousness. Personal pronouns like I, you and him gradually appeared in their language. Perhaps it was the teacher who consciously corrected it, or perhaps it was because Kiki herself had gotten rid of her dependence on her father in kindergarten that she gradually replaced Kiki with I. Of course, that wasn't all. Sometimes Kiki would also use the name Kiki. However, it was slowly changing. This was a good thing. It was just that it was a little off topic. Poplar Fruit smiled and asked, "That's right. Why do you like Sister Toto more than Sister Belle?" Kiki couldn't say it for a moment. After thinking for a long time, she pouted and said, "Because Sister Toto is a good person. She will take care of her younger brothers and sisters. Besides, Uncle Huang Lei is like Dad. He can cook delicious food." Kiki was right. Poplar Fruit was overjoyed, but it wasn't the answer that Poplar Fruit wanted. Fortunately, Fong Beibei helped Poplar Fruit out of the situation. She said, "Brother Feynman doesn't seem to like Sister Belle very much. She keeps talking." Because Sister Belle keeps muttering, "Come on, Feynman. Feynman, Feynman, Feynman. Oh, Feynman, where's Feynman? Oh, so you're here, Feynman." Kiki had seen the video made by the netizens, and she started to learn it with joy. It wasn't any malice. Kiki just felt that it was fun to nag like this, especially when it was accompanied by a fast-paced accompaniment. But everyone doesn't seem to like Sister Belle nagging like this, Poplar Fruit said. Yes. Kiki thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. So, when we talk to others, we have to be like Sister Toto. We have to pick the important words to say. It's the same when we tell stories to others. There's no need to repeat everyone's words. Poplar Fruit said to Kiki as if he was implying something. Chi-Chi listened in a daze and nodded in a daze. She still hadn't been able to connect her father's reasoning with her own actions. However, it didn't matter, because Kiki would definitely remember what her father said. One day, she would understand it herself. "Alright, let's watch TV, watch TV." Fong Beibei smiled and interrupted the preaching at the right time. No matter what, Poplar Fruit had successfully prevented the birth of a little Tangsung. Begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendation greater than or equal to *. Chapter 1125. In November, it was Poplar Fruit's birthday. This was nothing new to Poplar Fruit's hardcore fans. Early in the morning, many enthusiastic fans celebrated Poplar Fruit's birthday on the internet and Weibo, just like the fans of other celebrities. There were even some fans who directly sent birthday gifts to the school. Because they didn't have Yongguo's address, the gifts were all sorts of. There were food, drinks, clothes, decorations, and some of them were especially interesting. Poplar Fruit distributed the food and drinks to his classmates. As for the clothes and decorations, although Poplar Fruit wouldn't use them, in order to thank the fans, Poplar Fruit decided to record a video in the practice room at home, which was relatively spacious, with Fong Beibei's help. The content of the video was Poplar Fruit wearing the clothes given by the fans and holding the gifts from the fans as he walked on a runway show. There was no editing or fancy interlude. It was just a Xiao Duan video that was pieced together. It was very realistic. For example, in this Xiao Duan, Poplar Fruit was wearing the same Milford wool windbreaker from Sherlock, a navy blue cashmere scarf, and the classic deer hunting hat. When he appeared in front of the camera, the fans' little hearts were already in a commotion. However, there was a burst of laughter, and everyone saw the camera shake. "Baby, be more professional. You're the cameraman. How can you laugh?" Poplar Fruit complained on behalf of the fans. Fong Beibei held back her laughter and said, "No. Who told you not to wear shoes? It's too funny." The camera panned down and saw Poplar Fruit's bare feet outside his pants. They were even moving mischievously. "Oh, I'm hopeless, please kneel and lick my feet." Some female fans didn't even think that Poplar Fruit's big feet spoiled the atmosphere. They were infatuated with this kind of realistic cuteness. All right. Back to the point, don't pat my feet. The floor here is not suitable for wearing leather shoes. But I still have to thank this fan named XXXX for the full set of Sherlock costume, including the leather shoes. Poplar Fruit returned to the camera and said seriously, "I have to read out the reason why this fan gave me this outfit. There's no other reason. It's because of this drama." Well, she's a die-hard fan of this drama. The 2 years that this drama has been airing made her completely depressed. So she's become a fan of you, which is me. Poplar Fruit took out a piece of paper from his pocket and read aloud. "The reason why she likes me is because I have long legs, I'm handsome, and I'm as talented as Blessed Curls. Let me make it clear, I'm not trying to boast, I'm just thinking about it. She hopes that I can put on this outfit and recreate the glory of Sherlock." Poplar Fruit put away the note and said helplessly to the camera, "Okay, this reason is barely acceptable. By the way, Beibei also likes to watch this drama. She just told me that it's a pity that this fan didn't write down the last reason, which is that my face is as long as Blessed Curls." Then he looked at Fong Beibei behind the camera and said angrily, "How is my face long? Didn't you see the netizens saying that I'm handsome? Come here, I promise I won't hit you." In the end, Poplar Fruit was beaten up by Fong Beibei. Of course, this little routine of the Xiao Duan duo not only caused the fans to burst into laughter, but also many female fans lamented that they didn't meet Poplar Fruit earlier. Looking at the two of them being so happy, they felt so envious and sad. There was also an older girl who felt sad as well. They didn't say anything, so how could they be envious? This video was Poplar Fruit's small response to his fans on Weibo. In contrast, his fans had prepared so much for him. There were a lot of scenes that were worth laughing and remembering. However, no one expected that Poplar Fruit's last sentence would set off a frenzy of public opinion on the internet. "Okay. Finally, I'll accompany everyone to chat for a while, then I'll compress the video and upload it." The last Xiao Duan was recorded by Poplar Fruit himself in the study with a DSLR. At this time, Kiki and Fong Beibei were already asleep, but Poplar Fruit was very excited and got up in the middle of the night to record this speech. "How old am I this year? Yes, 26. Poplar Fruit seemed to be talking to himself. 26 is not old, but I already have a 3-year-old daughter. When it came to Kiki, Poplar Fruit couldn't help but smile, and the joy in his heart was shown on his face. At the beginning of this year, when I had a reunion with my classmates, one of them told me that Poplar Fruit, you are the winner in life. Poplar Fruit recalled and said, "Indeed, I have a house, a car, and a girlfriend who loves me. Actually, I should say that she's my fiancée. I won't tell you when we'll get married, so there's some suspense. And I have the cutest daughter." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "I won't say anything about my career, but to be honest, I feel very satisfied with the 2 girls I love the most in my life." Today's birthday was celebrated by Bebe and Kiki again. Poplar Fruit said, "It's very good, because this birthday happened to be on a day when I didn't have to go on a business trip. When I came back from class, they had already prepared everything for me. Decorations, a cake, and a gift. I won't show off the gift, so that you won't say that I'm showing off my love." Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "But this year, I'm still very touched." "The only regret? What's the only regret today?" Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said, "You may think that it's very strange for me to say that I'm very satisfied and happy, but I do have a little regret. When I made a wish before blowing out the candles, I thought, in fact, my wish is the same every year. I hope that my family will be happy together forever." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "So when Kiki asked me, I simply changed it and asked her what her wish was on her birthday." Kiki's birthday was at the end of April, but she refused to say anything after she made a wish. "I still remember it," Poplar Fruit said with a smile. "Today I used my wish to make Kiki say it. It turns out that her wish that day was to participate in Where Are We Going, Dad?" Yonggwa smiled helplessly and said, "Actually, I've always known that Chi-Chi has a soft spot for her father, but it's really difficult for me to fulfill her wish." "No, it's not a little difficult, it's impossible. After all, I'm not an entertainment figure. It's impossible for such a famous gold program to invite an ordinary person like me, right? Although I'm a little famous on Weibo, I'm grateful for everyone's love." Poplar Fruit shrugged and said with a smile, "But in this case, it's not that simple. I realized that I'm still not the perfect father that I want to be." Poplar Fruit said with some emotion, "But when it comes to raising children, no one can be perfect. If something is perfect, it will lose its value. On the contrary, a little regret is worth cherishing." "So," Poplar Fruit laughed and said, "From now on, the 27-year-old Poplar Fruit will continue to work hard in order to truly become Kiki's most handsome, charming, excellent, and invincible father." Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Chapter 11:26. Poplar Fruit had only casually shared his thoughts with the netizens. He did not estimate the impact of his video at all. After uploading the video, Poplar Fruit closed Weibo and other social media apps. He rubbed his palms and was ready to start his translation work. It could be said that there were probably not many translators at Poplar Fruit's level in the country. Even if there were, they would be old translators who were too old to walk. They did not need to use a lot of translation work to improve themselves or maintain their state. However, Poplar Fruit was still young, wasn't he? He still maintained a great passion for translation. Even this year, especially in the second half of the year, Poplar Fruit was so busy that he did not have much time to do translation work. Even so, Poplar Fruit would still use the time when he was awake in the middle of the night to pass the time. That's right, Poplar Fruit did translation for fun. Being able to travel through the author's thought world and swim in different words was Poplar Fruit's special joy. Of course, Poplar Fruit's pastime did not require him to translate some shallow or worthless books. In the new translation industry, in the entire country, Poplar Fruit was also a figure standing at the top of the pyramid. Not to mention that the new translation industry would do its best to help Poplar Fruit collect some valuable literary copyrights. Even if there was nothing that Poplar Fruit was satisfied with, as long as he released the news, there would be a few strengthened camp authors lining up to wait for Poplar Fruit to turn over the brand. This was definitely not an exaggeration. That was because he was Poplar Fruit. The translations of the two-time Nobel Prize in Literature winner and the popular online novels that he translated had already climbed to the top 100 in sales worldwide. Online novels were now very popular abroad, and they were gradually being corrected by the country. Even though Poplar Fruit was not the decisive factor in the birth of this craze, Poplar Fruit was definitely one of its promoters. This year, foreign film and television companies had come to China to discuss the copyright of these online novels with Tungsin Company. If the copyright of the film and TV series made money, New Translation Road or Zheng Yujia would still have a lot of profits. After all, she had exchanged shares with Tencent Literature. However, it was also because of Poplar Fruit's prowess that all the books translated by Poplar Fruit had to be carefully selected by him. He would never give in because of someone else's recommendation. Chinese characteristics, hee. This included the company. Poplar Fruit had his own assistant who would organize a list of books for Poplar Fruit every month. However, Poplar Fruit had the freedom to choose which books to translate. Currently, Poplar Fruit was preparing to translate 2 books. One was the work of teacher Lu Cixin, who was known as the best science fiction writer in China. Or rather, it could not be said to be one book because the three-body problem was a series of novels. There were a total of 3 books, collectively known as the Once Upon a Time on Earth trilogy. In fact, teacher Lu was not only famous in China, but he was also a well-known science fiction writer internationally. Most of the English copyrights of his works had been sold. These 3 books were no exception. However, Tungsun Literature, who had signed a contract with teacher Lu, was ambitious. They recommended his works because they wanted to capture the other small language markets abroad in one fell swoop. Therefore, these books were placed on Poplar Fruit's desk. Generally speaking, Poplar Fruit would not accept such a recommendation. However, teacher Lu's books were different. Poplar Fruit had read all his science fiction works, and they were very, very outstanding. Not only did he not reject them, but he was also excited. He decided to temporarily stop translating online novels and translate The Three-Body Problem first. There was another book that Poplar Fruit had wanted to translate a long time ago. However, it was also at the beginning of this month that the Copyright Department of New Translation Road officially signed the contract for the Chinese version of the entire book. Island Bookstore was a book that went on sale in the US at the beginning of summer this year. It broke records all the way and became a phenomenal global bestseller in the US, and even the whole world. Poplar Fruit read the book not long after it was listed. Needless to say, he liked it. More importantly, he felt the love and happiness in life from this book. In other words, he was very glad that he had such a rich and loving life. Compared to the main character in the book, A.J. Farrick, Poplar Fruit's greatest happiness was that he had everything that Farrick wanted: family, love, and health. Of course, Poplar Fruit did not like the ending of the story. Although he understood that the tragedy made the whole story sublime, he just did not like it. He did not like it. It was very difficult to get the Chinese version of the book, let alone the copyright of other languages. The staff of New Translation Road and Poplar Fruit's old rivals, Dongxin and Yilin, had found the author in the United States. However, due to the fierce competition, the other party was hesitant. New Translation Road used Poplar Fruit as their trump card. Lian Yang was famous in the publishing industry all over the world. Everyone knew about Poplar Fruit's works and greatness. However, Dongxin and Yilin shamelessly offered a very high price. It was 1/3 higher than New Translation Road's price. They showed an attitude that they would not let New Translation Road succeed even if they were to lose money. In the end, Poplar Fruit sent an email to the author, Gabriella Zevin. Poplar Fruit was too busy to go to the United States. I also have a daughter. Poplar Fruit expressed his sincerity and his love for the book. She was born just like A.J. It was like holding little Maya in the bookstore. It was full of surprise and joy. I was young, but I understood A and my daughter, J. My love for Maya. I understood A and my lover, J. My love for Amelia. Everyone has a difficult year in their life. I got through it and ushered in a beautiful happiness. So, I understood everything that you wanted to express in your book. I also have the ability to better present your book to the Chinese readers. Because we all have love, we all want to sow the seeds of love. Because of Poplar Fruit's email, Gabriella Zevin finally gave the Chinese version rights to New Translation Road. However, it was only the Chinese version rights. This was because the other rights of Gabriella's book had been sold long ago. Who asked it to be a bestseller? She once again snatched a big fat piece of meat from veteran publishing houses like Dongxin and Yilin. This book was destined to be a bestseller once it was released, which made Dongxin and Yilin very angry. However, their anger had little to do with Poplar Fruit. If they wanted to vent their anger, it would be directed at New Translation Road. However, New Translation Road was not afraid of them. Now, New Translation Road had more and more contracted translators. From online literature to traditional literature, New Translation Road also trained translators while signing contracts. Gradually, it developed a positive development like Shinda Translation Road. New Translation Road was no longer the small publishing house that could be bullied by them. Because of the preferential treatment for translators and authors, New Translation Road had become a new benchmark in the publishing industry. While the other publishing houses were still unwilling to cut their meat to make changes, New Translation Road had quickly caught up. Well, without thinking too much, Poplar Fruit put his hands on the keyboard and began his translation work. P.S. Here I recommend the bookstore on the island. Although it is a bestseller, it is really good. Xiao Han has read more than half of it now, and has fallen in love with it deeply. Those who like Kiki will also like Little Maya in the book. But let me give you a heads up. This book will not have a perfect ending. Those who don't like it should be careful. Although Xiao Han recommended it. But I have to say that the translation of this book is really bad. But the original content is awesome and saved this book. It is currently the #1 bestseller on all major websites. But I have to complain about the low status of translators in the publishing industry. The first translator of this book committed suicide last year due to depression. Unfortunately, this may also be the main reason for the low translation level of this book. But from this translator's introduction, it can be seen that because of the low remuneration, he could only choose to work part-time. This is the current situation in China. There is a lack of talents in the translation industry, and the quality of translations in the publishing industry is mixed. This is the sadness of not being valued in the whole industry, and not being improved for a long time. It is a pity that we don't have Poplar Fruit in our lives. There is no New Translation Road. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to *. Chapter 1127. The second day after his birthday, Poplar Fruit received a call from Mr. He. They had been in contact for a long time, but Poplar Fruit still felt guilty towards Mr. He. This was because Poplar Fruit had always rejected Mr. He's invitations to appear on shows. There were Fast Forward and other shows. This summer, Mr. He wanted Poplar Fruit to appear on Central TV's summer vacation show, Young China Strong. Of course, he would be a guest on the show. Poplar Fruit was very interested in this show, but he was too busy, so he had to decline again. But their friendship was still there. Mr. He would visit Poplar Fruit's house every now and then. Mr. He also asked Poplar Fruit for help a while ago. His first movie, Jasmine Blossoms, would be filmed at Guangdong Agricultural University. He asked Poplar Fruit for help with the application and coordination. This was not difficult. Although Poplar Fruit was not from the Agricultural University, he had interacted with the leaders there. Most importantly, Poplar Fruit had connections in both the Education Department and the Education Department. All he had to do was mention it, and the Agricultural University happily agreed. But Mr. He did not seem to want to tell Poplar Fruit about his movie. Instead he asked, "Poplar Fruit, are you going to participate in Where's Dad Go?" Younghua stared blankly and asked doubtfully, "No? I didn't even receive any notice. Why do you ask?" He still did not realize what kind of discussion his video had caused yesterday. Mr. He asked, "No, I'm asking if you are interested in participating? Everyone is talking about it online." Mr. He explained a little, and Poplar Fruit realized that the video he posted yesterday had been forwarded and commented on by too many people. Other than Poplar Fruit's fan gift show, Poplar Fruit's last comment attracted a lot of attention. Coincidentally, the second season of Where Are We Going, Dad? Had just finished airing. The popularity of Where Are We Going, Dad? Had not cooled down yet. People were already thinking and guessing the guest list for the next season. As for Poplar Fruit, he didn't think much of it. Even when he was explaining to teacher he thought, "I didn't say that I had to go, Daddy. I'm just being generous because I can't fulfill my daughter's wish, so I'm looking forward to the future." Poplar Fruit laughed. "What's wrong with that? I didn't complain that Mango Terrace didn't give us a chance. That's obviously impossible, isn't it? Poplar Fruit, you underestimate your own influence." Teacher he said. Mr. He had more than 60 million fans. Of course, Poplar Fruit couldn't compare to him, but they weren't that far behind. Poplar Fruit's Weibo was also a verified account with tens of millions of fans. Although there would definitely be a lot of fake fans, if there were a few die-hard fans, it would still be very impressive. Just like that, the fans kept urging Mango Terrace to invite Poplar Fruit to be a guest for the next season. This topic instantly became a hot topic. Huh. I've caused you so much trouble? Poplar Fruit scratched his head and said embarrassedly, "How about this? I'll post on Weibo to appease the fans." "There's no need. Do you think I'm calling to criticize you?" "Teacher," he said with a smile. In reality, Teacher He and Poplar Fruit had nothing to do with each other, even though they were colleagues. With Teacher He's relationship with Poplar Fruit, he definitely wouldn't criticize Poplar Fruit over such a small matter. Also, this isn't a bad thing. Teacher He laughed. After he explained a little, Yonghua finally understood. It turned out that Daddy Go Nowhere wished that there would still be people discussing the show even before it was aired. It was just an appeal now. Would the production team listen to the audience's cries? That's impossible. The guest list for every episode of Daddy Go was not only based on the show's own requirements, but there were also major conflicts of interest regarding who was chosen. "Poplar Fruit, do you really want to bring Kiki on the show?" Teacher He asked. "To be exact, it's not me who wants it, but Kiki wants it. She really likes this show, and Kiki made a wish. I want to help her fulfill it." Poplar Fruit smiled and said, "Actually, I recommended you in the first season of Daddy Go." Teacher He suddenly revealed a secret. But unfortunately, Director Xie said that Kiki was too young and didn't agree. Hearing that, Poplar Fruit was surprised. He didn't know that he had a brush with Daddy Go in the first season. But thinking about it, it was true that Kiki was only a little over a year old at that time. Although she was more mature compared to other children her age, she was still young. Director Xie didn't allow it. Poplar Fruit himself would have rejected the invitation if he had received it. There was no need to mention the past. Teacher He asked Poplar Fruit about his thoughts, and then recommended him again. "Don't get your hopes up." Teacher He said to Poplar Fruit, "I can only say that I'll try. It's okay. It doesn't matter if it succeeds or not." Poplar Fruit laughed. "If it's not convenient for you, there's no need to recommend me." Poplar Fruit didn't plan to trouble others, including Teacher He and his fans. This time, the matter was so big that even Teacher He was alarmed. This was something that Poplar Fruit didn't expect. All along, Poplar Fruit wanted to rely on his own ability to fight for everything he wanted, not rely on nepotism. Including the previous Top 10 award, Poplar Fruit mainly relied on his own reputation and achievements. Today, Poplar Fruit was about to reject Teacher He's kindness, but he swallowed it back down because he suddenly remembered Kiki's wish. For the first time, Poplar Fruit changed his insistence. "It's good to have a little hope." After the phone call with Teacher He, Poplar Fruit hesitated for a moment, but still went online to check the situation. In fact, at first, it was Poplar Fruit's fans who were discussing it. They even dug up a fan's suggestion from a year ago. "Where are we going, Daddy? We should invite Poplar Fruit and Kiki for the second season." At that time, the fans' reason was that since Zhang Liang could be on Where Are We Going, Daddy, why not invite Poplar Fruit, who had better modeling achievements and looks than Zhang Liang, as a guest? At that time, everyone only discussed it a little and didn't pay much attention to it. However, now that it was dug up, Poplar Fruit and Kiki's fans regretted it. If they had worked harder back then, they would have been able to fulfill Kiki's wish, right? It was because of this guilt that they started to call for Poplar Fruit to be on the show. Poplar Fruit realized that it wasn't just the netizens who were making a fuss. Some media outlets also began to report on this hot topic. In particular, his old flame, Tungsun News, also liked to push this matter to the headlines. Tungsun News also listed the top 10 reasons why Poplar Fruit was qualified to be on the show. The entertainment reporters even said jokingly, "Poplar Fruit, don't belittle yourself. Although you rarely walk around in the entertainment industry, we have never pushed you out of this circle." The voices came one after another, but it was far from the point of forcing him to abdicate. This was because another thing attracted people's attention. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to **. Chapter 1128. Sichuan province was already scarred and had yet to fully recover from the Wenchuan earthquake 6 years ago and the Ya'an earthquake last year. This time, it happened in Kongding, which was even more remote. Fortunately, the magnitude of the earthquake this time was relatively low, and the epicenter was located in a high mountain area where there were few people. There had been many earthquakes in history, so most of the buildings had good earthquake resistance, so there were not many casualties. However, the remoteness of the area and the destruction of the mountain roads added a certain degree of difficulty to the rescue. In addition, winter was coming, and the temperature in the mountain city fluctuated greatly. The rescue and resettlement of the disaster victims was imminent. Because the earthquake attracted the attention of netizens, the clamor about poplar fruit bringing Kiki on "Where are we going, Dad?" also subsided a lot. After all, poplar fruit was not a public figure. He was not good at managing his own fan base, so the unity of his fans was still lacking. What's more, Yanghua urged the fans to be calm and not use their power to threaten others. Thus, this small storm was finally settled. Regarding the earthquake, poplar fruit was not idle. Not only did he donate his own money, but he also asked Fat Dragon to help buy some disaster relief items and send them to the disaster areas in Sichuan province. He was indeed not free because it was only 2 days after his birthday, and he had to go around the country to give lectures. Also, there was one thing that had to be mentioned. The black guy, Makaru, was happy to see the Chinese government officially communicate with him to discuss the best way to help him with online education. Makaru talked to Poplar Fruit, and the country had already communicated with Poplar Fruit. They also asked Poplar Fruit to send a technical team to Beijing to help with the research and development of the online platform and equipment. Yanghua didn't want to pass on this responsibility to others. After all, he was the most knowledgeable about online education, as well as the language and cultural education of African countries. He had self-studied for more than a month. However, the leader was still Makaru. Why did Makaru have to take the lead? Because he was an African. With Makaru taking the lead, a hot-blooded young man with both Tanzanian and Congolese backgrounds, there was a reason for China's assistance. Of course, this was a piece of cake for Poplar Fruit. To be able to help people in a poorer and more backward world was also a good deed. Although Poplar Fruit did not believe in Buddhism, he believed that everything in the world was related to cause and effect. If he did a good deed today, perhaps there would be a big reward tomorrow? Even if there was no reward, his heart and conscience would be comforted. Indeed, he didn't put in a lot of effort, because the country took over De Liang, leaving Yanghua with very simple work. Therefore, Yanghua had time to express her opinion on her good friend's marriage. F***ck Are you F***king getting married? Did I hear wrongly? Poplar Fruit, who had not cursed in front of others for a long time, cursed in front of Song Jiwen. Not only that, he also grabbed Song Jiwen's head and touched his forehead to see if he had a fever. Today, Poplar Fruit was in school, then Song Jiwen came over to talk to Poplar Fruit about something. Then the explosive news of his marriage came out. Haha, you didn't hear wrong. Song Jiwen let Yanghua twist and turn, but he still had a sly smile on his face. Okay, when was it decided? How come I didn't know? Poplar Fruit also calmed down. He sat down and put his arm on the plastic table of the beverage shop. He stretched out his hand and said, "Give me the invitation, I'll see when. If there's a conflict, I'll have to ask for a change of time." No matter what, this was his best friend's wedding. No matter how busy Poplar Fruit was, he had to make time to attend the wedding. It hasn't been decided yet. Song Jiwen laughed and scratched his head. He said, "It was decided yesterday. My parents haven't told me yet, so I'm here to discuss it with you." That's not right. You're getting married in such a hurry? Poplar Fruit looked at Song Jiwen in confusion. Although Poplar Fruit was touched that he told him immediately, Poplar Fruit still felt that something was wrong. 2 weeks ago, when Song Jiwen came to Poplar Fruit's birthday, they were still a couple. They were still far away from their goal of getting married. What made them suddenly decide to get married? Song Jiwen scratched his head and pretended to be simple and honest. He said, "Hee hee, when the conditions are right, success comes naturally." What do you mean? Poplar Fruit suddenly thought of something. His eyes suddenly widened as he looked at Song Jiwen. He didn't say anything. But Song Ji-wen scratched his head, smiled embarrassedly and finally nodded. Poplar Fruit's heart was suddenly filled with thousands of horses galloping, covering the sky with flying grass, mud and horses. Damn, you're so capable. Poplar Fruit pointed at Song Ji-wen weakly. He didn't want to complain anymore. Hee hee, aren't you the pot calling the kettle black? Song Ji-wen laughed shamelessly. Although what he said was right, Poplar Fruit still rolled his eyes and said, "We're far from it. At least, I didn't mean it. Also, I pay attention to safety measures, okay? How many months has it been broken?" Poplar Fruit looked at Song Ji-wen and asked. 2 months. Song Ji-wen scratched his head and said, "We haven't seen the scale yet, but we have to get married soon. Little Chili said she doesn't want to be a joke when she's pregnant. What do you think?" Poplar Fruit glanced at him. "What do I think? I don't have any opinions. You're 27, I'm 27 too. It's time to get married," Song Ji-wen said with a smile. "You still have a conscience." Poplar Fruit rubbed his eyebrows and began to help Song Ji-wen think about this problem. When they had just graduated, Poplar Fruit and Song Ji-wen talked about their dreams. He said that he would never get married before the age of 30, because he hadn't enjoyed enough of the colorful world. "Forget it, I'll help you tell godparents." Poplar Fruit sighed and said, "What about the time? Do you have a time?" Song Ji-wen stood up and said with a smile, "The time is easy, it's best to do it within this year. It's okay to cover it with the wedding dress this year, but everything will be exposed next year." "Easy your sister. So hasty." Poplar Fruit was speechless, but he still nodded. "I know you're a good brother." Song Ji-wen chuckled. He relaxed, drank a mouthful of water, and then said, "Lao Gua, don't you think it's quite emotional?" Song Ji-wen made a sad expression. "Emotional about what? The impermanence of life? Surprises always pop out when you don't expect them? The preciousness of family? Or the rush of time?" Poplar Fruit raised his eyelids and asked lazily. What he said he himself also felt emotional. "No." Song Ji-wen smiled and said, "When we were in school, our dormitory was discussing who would get married first and who would get married last. You were recognized as the first, and I was recognized as the last. In the end I got married earlier than you, haha." "That's right. Why didn't Poplar Fruit think of this?" However, when he saw Song Ji-wen's smug expression, Poplar Fruit's emotions disappeared, leaving only the desire to beat him up. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations, greater than over equal to asterisk. Chapter 1129. Song Ji-wen was about to get married. This man, who had been unrestrained all his life, had not had time to fulfill his unrestrained wish. He was tied to the harbor of marriage by a woman who was pregnant with a child. Communication with the Song family was surprisingly smooth. Lu Suqin originally had some complaints about Song Ji-wen dating a girl from another province, but now that she was pregnant, she could only sigh and accept it. Chun Anlin wasn't a bad person either. After leaving Yangcheng for half a year, she continued to open a martial arts dojo. However, this time she could hang up her family's name and call a few martial arts masters from her family to act as instructors. She could retreat behind the scenes and be a boss who didn't have to work so hard. And to be honest, Chun Anlin's personality was very much liked by Lu Suqin. Although Chun Anlin often punched and kicked Song Ji-wen, she was very respectful to her elders. This was also a good tradition cultivated by martial artists from a young age. It was also this kind of respect that made Lu Suqin unable to put on the airs of a strict mother-in-law. Chun Anlin's family members also came over. There were several valiant and strong men, and they almost scared the Song family. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit was there. His gentle aura blocked the other party's imposing manner, and it also changed the Chun family's opinion of the Song family. After 2 days of discussion, Poplar Fruit didn't know how the discussion ended, but both parties finally came to an agreement. They even confirmed the wedding date. Therefore, Song Ji-wen and Chun Anlin's wedding was only left with the final preparations. Poplar Fruit didn't have time to participate. Song Ji-wen and his family were busy booking hotels and sending out wedding invitations. Fong Beibei accompanied Chun Anlin to pick out the wedding dress, and design the wedding decorations. Everything was progressing steadily. However, in mid-December, Poplar Fruit became the hottest news figure in the country again. It wasn't that Poplar Fruit had done something amazing again, but that Poplar Fruit's name had actually appeared on Central TV's list of the top 10 people who touched China in 2014. Although he hadn't really been evaluated as one of the top 10 figures, being on the list of candidates was already a very great thing. Usually, when this candidate list was announced every year, it didn't receive much attention from the people. But this year, the sharp-eyed reporters discovered the existence of Poplar Fruit. In the past, it was always some good people who contributed silently, but Poplar Fruit wasn't some unknown person. Moreover, Poplar Fruit was so young that even the reporters were surprised by the name list. Of course, being surprised was one thing. He was keenly aware of the news value of this controversy. It would definitely cause a huge controversy. Thus, this matter was exposed. It wasn't appropriate to say that it was exposed because Central TV had publicized the name list, but very few people would go to the official website to look at it. Moreover, it wasn't the voting period yet, so the reporters were at most hyping up the news of Poplar Fruit being on the list. But Poplar Fruit was really too young. He was only officially approaching the age of 27 this year. He wasn't even close to the slightly mature age of 30. It was really hard to convince people. Therefore, there were two opposing forces on the internet. One side was Poplar Fruit's fans, and the other side was other people. Poplar Fruit's fans naturally supported Poplar Fruit unconditionally, even though they themselves felt a little guilty. Other people's reactions were a little different. Some netizens who understood Poplar Fruit were a little more rational. They only felt that Poplar Fruit was too young and couldn't touch China. On the other hand, more extreme netizens angrily attacked Poplar Fruit and Central TV on the internet, saying that there must be something shady going on behind the scenes, and that Poplar Fruit was some kind of second-generation heir. Poplar Fruit really didn't know about this matter. Moreover, he was so busy flying back and forth in the country. When he came back, he still had to worry about his brother's wedding. He didn't have time to pay attention to the current news. By the time he found out about it, the internet was already in an uproar. I was selected? Why didn't I know about it? Poplar Fruit looked at Fong Beibei in confusion. Fong Beibei showed him some reports. After Poplar Fruit asked a few people, he found out that the province had directly reported to Poplar Fruit. The higher-ups also felt that Poplar Fruit wasn't bad, so they specially approved Poplar Fruit's name on the list. For this matter, Poplar Fruit really couldn't come forward. He couldn't provoke his fans to fight with others. Regardless of whether it was right to do so, this behavior was not in line with Poplar Fruit's character at all. However, Poplar Fruit also couldn't ask his fans to not quarrel with the other party, because his fans didn't do anything wrong. He couldn't possibly stop others from voting for him, right? Poplar Fruit could only privately ask the initiators of a few fan organizations who were in close contact with him to calm everyone's emotions. However, the one who started the trouble should end it. The organizers of Central TV's Touching China program should also stand up and give an explanation in the face of public criticism. However, they did not directly respond. Instead, they played the recorded promotional VCR about Poplar Fruit's selection in advance. Moreover, they promoted it on Weibo with videos and multiple pictures. Many people watched the VCR through online channels. Only from the video did they understand that this seemingly low-key young man, who often received attention, had made a lot of contributions that they did not know about in addition to his brave heroic act of taking on 8 people by himself in March. Remote volunteer teaching was a new type of public service that many people had only heard of, but did not have a deep understanding of. It was founded by Poplar Fruit and gradually became a public service enterprise under continuous investment and appeal. It was epoch-making and there was no other similar model in the world. It allowed China to be one step ahead of the rest of the world and take the lead in reforming education in remote mountainous areas. At present, this education model not only shortened the distance between time and space, but also mobilized a large number of outstanding students to dedicate themselves in care for children in the mountainous areas. It allowed the light of education to benefit tens of millions of poor children. It also broke through and improved the quality of education, truly shortening the gap between urban and rural, eastern and western areas in terms of teaching standards and resources. Leader number 1 had praised remote volunteer teaching at the conference. Poverty alleviation must be supported by the intellect. Letting children in poor areas receive a good education is an important task for poverty alleviation and development. It is also an important way to stop the transmission of poverty between generations. It was also under his guidance that remote volunteer teaching had developed rapidly. The country was going to adopt the model of cooperation between the country and university student voluntary organizations to further improve the level and popularization of education in the mountainous areas. And all of this was closely related to Poplar Fruit. Now, Poplar Fruit was still working tirelessly to carry out speech activities all over the country, appealing for more university students to join this public service enterprise. The VCR also mentioned a statistic that no one had calculated. In the past 2 years, Poplar Fruit's personal donations to the Remote Volunteer Teaching Charity Fund exceeded 200 million yuan. Seeing this statistic, many dissatisfied netizens fell silent. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to *. Chapter 1130. In this world, Yang Guo wasn't the only one who donated a large sum of money. For example, Wang Shizong had asked him to donate 100 million renminbi to buy Poplar Fruit's Ledongzhuiyue shares. There were countless people who donated more than Yang Guo. Not to mention Bill Gates, who donated tens of billions. Xiao Yifu, who had passed away in Hong Kong, donated nearly 5 billion Hong Kong dollars in China. But this was different. Whether it was Wang Shizong or Old Master Xiao Yifu, the money they donated was just a drop in the ocean compared to what they earned. Poplar Fruit had donated 200 million renminbi, which was more than 80% of his earnings. Poplar Fruit was already very good at making money. Many professors and scholars like him were poor all their lives. But his generosity did not allow him to keep much money. According to some netizens, Poplar Fruit's biggest expense was his duplex apartment. Even though he had made so much money, he had never spent so much money. He didn't have any valuable jewelry on him. Other than the clothes given to him by Givenchy, the rest of his clothes were all street goods that didn't cost more than $1,000, compared to the clothes of the rich. As for his car, Poplar Fruit had not changed his Land Rover for 3 years. Until now, he had only bought a Beetle for Fang Beibei. That's right. Fang Beibei did not mention this. Both of them were charity fanatics. One of them had made epic-making contributions to education in the mountainous areas, and the other was famous in the pet industry in Guangzhou. The whole family shared their time and money for charity. Of course, this analysis was made by Poplar Fruit's fans and spread on Weibo. CCTV's VCR also mentioned other Poplar Fruit's contributions. Let's talk about the small ones first. Under Poplar Fruit's suggestion, New Translation Road Publishing House had adjusted the translator's remuneration system. This was the first time the publishing house had changed the translator's remuneration system. Although this reform was not widespread in the entire industry, at the very least, the new translation path had given all translators and translation enthusiasts a ray of hope. Not only that, but the books translated by Poplar Fruit, in addition to the works of the 2 Nobel Prize winners, also launched several global bestsellers and made Chinese online novels popular all over the world. This was especially true for Chinese fantasy novels. Not only did they break the seal of Western fantasy, but they also occupied a place in the world of literature. The success of these online novels could not be attributed to Poplar Fruit, but for the world to see and acknowledge them, it was definitely inseparable from Poplar Fruit's hard work. Nowadays, the export of online literature had gradually become a small industry. It was no longer difficult for Poplar Fruit to support it alone. But now, Poplar Fruit's translations were still the most recognized flag in the hearts of foreign readers. If it was just remote teaching, if it was only translating and promoting online literature, Poplar Fruit was far from reaching the level of touching China. This was because there were many people who had done more than Poplar Fruit. For example, Teacher Meng, who had shared his life in the mountains. In the VCR recorded by CCTV, they also introduced Poplar Fruit's greatest achievement this year: the Chinese word disassembly theory of Chinese education. This theory was born last year. Some news media reported it, but because the academic theory itself did not receive much attention, not many people knew about it even though it was broadcast on news simulcast in September this year. But now, through the VCR, people finally knew about it and finally understood the impact of the theory developed by Poplar Fruit. We have said it many times before, but this word is still not enough to describe the word disassembly theory. Or rather, it is more appropriate to say that it is a theory that promotes the development of an era. The emergence of the word disassembly method was no less significant than the invention of pinyin and the use of punctuation to the Chinese language. It made Chinese easier to learn. Although the word disassembly method had not yet been popularized in China, because the Chinese education model in China was deeply rooted, the acceptance was too broad, and the reform was difficult. It needed to be done slowly, but overseas, the theory had been fully applied. The voice host in the VCR said with excitement, "In the future we will see more and more foreigners speaking fluent Mandarin." The reason why English could be used all over the world was mainly because of the strength of the United States in the 20th century, but it was also because English was easier to learn. The number of Chinese speakers in the world accounted for about 1/5 of the world's total population, and the use of Chinese was also ranked third in the world. In addition, Chinese culture had a rich heritage of more than 5,000 years. In terms of attractiveness to foreigners, it was not much worse than English. However, the popularity of Chinese teaching abroad was not high. The main reason was that Chinese was too difficult to learn. Many people used to think that it was one of the most difficult languages in the world to learn. Now that the difficulty of learning Chinese had decreased, Chinese books and culture were gradually warming up all over the world. In addition to the increasingly open and developed China, it was foreseeable that Chinese learning would become more and more popular with people all over the world. The host's excitement was not because of his own imagination, but because there was evidence. Data showed that after the Confucius Institutes around the world promoted the new teaching model under the new education theory in the middle of this year, not only did the passing rate and passing speed of the Chinese exam greatly increase, but the number of people who signed up had also surprisingly reached a record high, 4 million. The previous highest number was 1.5 million. The VCR commentator was excited by himself, and the audience was also excited. Although it was just a vision, who would not want to see a prosperous dynasty that belonged to the Chinese language? Of course, this still needed people from all walks of life and the country's strong promotion. Whether this vision could really be realized in the future was another matter. However, Poplar Fruit's contribution was unquestionable. He opened up a new path for the country, for the Chinese language, and for the rise of national culture, a bridge that could cross the ocean and reach the other side. There was no need for time to give affirmation. Poplar Fruit's greatness was enough to make people all over the country respect him. Yes, Poplar Fruit was still young, so it was difficult for some older people to put aside their prejudices and feel moved by him. But Poplar Fruit was really young. He had already achieved such great achievements now, so what heights could he reach in the future? After Old Ji's death, there would be no more masters in China. This comment could probably be kicked away, right? Even if Poplar Fruit could not be recognized as a master, with his unlimited potential, his strength that was infinitely close to that of a master, and his contributions that were already at the level of a master, it was only a matter of time before Poplar Fruit became a master. After this video was released, Poplar Fruit's fans cheered and began to hold their heads high to announce to the world. Many of those who had previously opposed him changed sides and used reposts to express their approval. Those who did not change sides also fell silent. Only a few extreme netizens who would shout no matter what others said were left, but they were no longer in the mood. Their clamor could not gain support. Perhaps Poplar Fruit had really touched China. Seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendations greater than or equal to *. Chapter 1131. Song Jiwen's wedding was in the last week of December. The whole wedding was very lively. Poplar Fruit also met many of his old classmates who were already working all over the country. The wedding was quite interesting. Song Jiwen and Chun Anlin got married. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei were the best man and bridesmaid respectively. Kiki and a little boy from the Song family were the flower girls. Lu Suqin was so happy that she pulled Poplar Fruit and said, "I thought you two and Jiwen were getting married together." In fact, Fong Beibei, who had participated in many processes, was also moved. She later whispered to Poplar Fruit that she cried during the wedding ceremony. Poplar Fruit held Fong Beibei's hand and said in her ear with a smile, "Then I'll buy a ring tomorrow and propose to you." Of course, it was just a joke. However, Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei had already been engaged during the discussion between the two families. The wedding date was set for the second half of 2015. This was because it was now the last year of Fong Beibei's undergraduate studies. Although she would continue to study for her PhD, Fong Beibei had already decided to marry Poplar Fruit after graduation. Although in private, Fong Beibei would also refer to herself as Mrs. Yang in front of Poplar Fruit. This was also a little fun between the two of them. Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei's marriage was still one step away. However, if nothing unexpected happened, this wedding was not far away, was it not? The last month of 2014 passed quickly. Although there was a dispute about the list of the top 10 people who touched China and Song Jiwen's lively wedding, it passed quickly in the end. Of course, there was still an accident on the last day. There was a stampede on the Bund of Shanghai that shocked the whole country. It was as if the chaos and accidents of the past year had not been resolved. However, people were more willing to believe that this was the end of 2014, and that 2015 would be a new beginning, a beautiful beginning. For example, its stock market. However, the stock market had nothing to do with Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit was still busy with his speech post, traveling all over the country. But looking back, his half a year of hard work was actually quite worth it. Needless to say, at present, although remote teaching had been freed from Poplar Fruit's control, which was also what he was looking forward to, it had been able to show a trend of positive development all over the country. Now the only thing that Poplar Fruit could talk about was the remote teaching charity fund that he had founded. After the fund received widespread attention in December, it received a lot of donations. Some rich people even donated generously. At present, it had nearly 500 million in charity donations. Poplar Fruit did not intend to hide it from himself or the universities in Guangdong province. Instead, he expanded the scope of the fund's benefits to all parts of the country. The purpose of the fund was to fund remote teaching clubs all over the country in close communication with mountain village children, like the exchange of visits between the two sides during the holidays. Poplar Fruit also intended to leave the management of the charity fund to the professionals. Many people might have forgotten about Guan Yandian's existence, but he was a good friend who translated the biography of Steve Jobs with Poplar Fruit. After he graduated with a master's degree in management from Australia, he returned to China, because they had been in contact before, and this guy still maintained a good interest in translation. Poplar Fruit let him work in the translation management department of the new translation company. At the same time, he also wanted to see if he could pick up the job of translating. In the end, Guan Yandian still could not become a good professional translator. His talent was a little lacking. However, his management skills were still good. After all, he had studied a master's degree in management for a few years. Later, in the early summer of 2014, Poplar Fruit gradually did not have the energy to do the charity fund himself. Poplar Fruit decided to give this important task to Guan Yandian. In other words, he took Guan Yandian back from the new translation company. As it turned out, Guan Yandian managed the charity fund very well. Of course, Guan Yandian was not alone. Wang Yuba had made a great contribution to remote teaching. Originally, he had a quota for postgraduate studies. However, this guy was really not interested in language subjects. Therefore, after graduating from university last year, he also joined the remote teaching charity fund. At first, he was an assistant to Guan Yandian. Later, he was mainly responsible for the cooperation with the remote teaching charity organizations of the major universities in the country. This was also his strength. Therefore, under the management of Guan Yandian and Wang Yuba, the remote teaching charity fund was far better than under the management of Poplar Fruit alone. They were going to start recruiting people this year. Since Yanggua had the two generals Heng and Ha, he simply delegated all the power to Guan Yandian and Wang Yuba. Without changing his original intention and the principle of fairness, justice, and openness, he let Guan Yandian and Wang Yuba take charge until the end. After the start of 2015, before Poplar Fruit's speech schedule ended, the online voting for the top 10 people who touched China began. Poplar Fruit's fans immediately took action. They spread the news and called for more people to vote for Poplar Fruit. However, Poplar Fruit did not solicit votes. This was all a publicity campaign launched by the fans. Poplar Fruit did not even pay attention to the voting process and results. The newly appointed mayor of his hometown called Poplar Fruit to ask about him. He even wanted to help him solicit votes across the county. However, Poplar Fruit still smiled bitterly and declined. To be honest, Poplar Fruit did not want to win this award. He felt that he did not do more than the other candidates. For example, Malati, a police officer in Xinjiang, went undercover to catch drug dealers and bravely fought terrorists in a bomb pile. He did not have Poplar Fruit's agile skills, but he had an incomparably firm will and a fighting spirit that did not care about personal safety. For 14 years, it was because of Xinjiang police officers like him who fought on the front lines to protect this land that Xinjiang was able to win peace and tranquility in the midst of foreign terrorist forces. Really, if Poplar Fruit were to win this award, Poplar Fruit would not deserve it. Poplar Fruit did not think too much and did not pursue too much. He quietly lived his life. However, he did not know that because of the cheers of millions of fans and teacher his recommendation, he had already entered the sights of the program. Where do you go, Daddy? However, it was not yet time to finalize the guest list for this year's program. Director Xie, no, it should be producer Xie, wanted to wait a little longer, just a little longer. One had to know that the second season of Where Do You Go, Daddy? Did not receive as much praise as expected. Although there were still many voices of support, it still paled in comparison to the first season, especially the last few episodes. Therefore, producer Xie decided to make some improvements to the third season of Where Do You Go, Daddy? In addition to the setting of the content, there was also the selection of guests. It needed to be considered again and again before a decision could be made. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to asterisk. Chapter 1132. This year's spring festival came a little late, so Poplar Fruit didn't go home so early. Taking advantage of the summer vacation, Poplar Fruit, who was already on vacation, took Kiki, who was also on vacation, to watch a movie. Pleasant Goat and Grey Wolf in the Year of Pleasant Goat. This was the 7th movie version of Pleasant Goat. Previously, Kiki had only seen it on the internet. Now that Kiki was old enough, Poplar Fruit took her to the cinema to watch the premiere. Feng Beibei went back to school early in the morning, because the academician professor's project team suddenly lacked people. She didn't go back to school with Poplar Fruit. However, Poplar Fruit wasn't unhappy. Instead, he felt that Feng Beibei was too lucky. To be honest, Poplar Fruit had completely passed the age of watching children's cartoons. Looking at Pleasant Goat, Poplar Fruit always had a kind of tiredness that made him want to sleep. But in order to accompany his daughter, Poplar Fruit had to bite the bullet and watch the whole movie. Otherwise, when they came out of the cinema later, Kiki would pull him and say something, and he wouldn't understand at all. However, this movie was still a bit interesting. There was a breakthrough in the plot. Not only was there a time travel plot, but they were all sent to ancient times by the time camera. There was also a magical body swap plot in Kiki. This plot might not be new in the eyes of Poplar Fruit and other adults. As early as more than 10 years ago, Stephen Chow's Journey to the West had already played with this plot. But for children, this was a very, very magical and incredible thing. After coming out, Kiki, who finally recovered from the movie plot, couldn't help but hold her father's hand and ask, "Papa, why did Lazy Goat and Grey Wolf swap bodies?" This was a good question. Poplar Fruit didn't know how to answer it. He had to vaguely repeat the plot of the movie again. But Kiki was more interested in this magical body swap. Why didn't Pleasant Goat and Grey Wolf swap bodies? Then, can I swap bodies with other children? The little guy was outside the cinema, holding his father's hand as he skipped along. His imagination kept running wild as he thought about it. Then why didn't Kiki say that she wanted to swap bodies with Daddy? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Yeah. If I switch with Papa, can Papa do it? Kiki's eyes lit up. She happily held her father's hand and could not walk anymore. Sure. But if Kiki becomes a father, will she take care of me like how I take care of you? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. However, such an awkward sentence made Kiki a little dizzy. She muttered, if Kiki becomes a papa, Papa's papa, take care of Papa? I don't understand. The little guy was bashful for a while. He put down the question and pouted, asking his father to pick her up. He also muttered, it must be because Papa refused to swap with Kiki and made Kiki dizzy. Of course he couldn't swap with Kiki. He didn't even have the mental preparation to take care of his father. Poplar Fruit happily played with the little guy for a while before he went to find his car parked in the hotel parking lot across the street. Driving home, when he went upstairs, Kiki sat on his father's neck and rode on the big horse. Now that Kiki was growing up, Fong Beibei had some difficulty holding her. Only Poplar Fruit could hold his daughter in various positions. Kiki sat very steadily. She held a pleasant goat doll that she bought in the cinema in one hand and gently touched Poplar Fruit's short hair with the other hand. She felt that it was very interesting. She suddenly came over and whispered in her father's ear, Papa, if you are taken away by Grey Wolf, Kiki will also save you. Ah, is that so? Poplar Fruit asked with a smile. Then how will Kiki save Papa? Although it was a little naive for his daughter's filial piety, Poplar Fruit was still somewhat moved. I want to be like Pleasant Goat, bravely defeat Grey Wolf, and then save Papa. Kiki sat on her father's neck and said with a heroic spirit. Then what if Grey Wolf is too powerful? Poplar Fruit chatted with Kiki like this. Unknowingly, they had already returned home. He took out the key to open the door. How powerful? Kiki asked doubtfully. Kiki is more powerful than Pleasant Goat. I can play Bembem boxing. When he opened the door, Fong Beibei had already returned. She put down the iPad that she was playing with and asked with a smile. You're back? Was the movie good? Good. Ma, it's a pity that you didn't go to see the movie. Kiki immediately chirped in reply. She liked it very much. Poplar Fruit smiled and carried Kiki down and said, on the way back, she was telling me the plot of the movie. She also said that if Grey Wolf took Papa away, she would also come to save Papa. Wow, Kiki is so brave, so powerful. Fong Beibei applauded Kiki. Kiki, however, hugged Fong Beibei's thigh, pouted her small mouth and said, but Papa said that I can't beat Grey Wolf. It doesn't matter, Kiki is still young. When she grows up, she can protect Papa and Papa. Fong Beibei smiled and comforted her. But Kiki is also very powerful now. Grey Wolf is actually not powerful at all. My Bembem boxing can beat him. Kiki somewhat proudly puffed out her small chest. Poplar Fruit felt that this kind of conversation was a little interesting. He said with a smile, what if it's not just Grey Wolf? What if it's like in the movie, Grey Wolf and Papa swapped bodies and then became as powerful as Papa? Kiki began to be confused again. Yes, Papa was so powerful. He was the most powerful person in the world in Kiki's mind. If he became Grey Wolf, how could Kiki beat him? She didn't think too far. How would Kiki face a Grey Wolf who looked exactly like her Papa and her Papa who looked exactly like Grey Wolf? But the more she thought, the more confused she would be. Alas, Papa is going to be eaten by Grey Wolf. Woo 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 woo. Poplar Fruit teased Kiki. He was somewhat tired of it. Fong Beibei unhappily smiled and glared at him. Papa, don't cry, Kiki will beat the bad Grey Wolf. Kiki hurried over and comforted her Papa. The little fellow really thought that her Papa was sad. She said, Papa, don't be afraid. As long as Kiki bravely fights with Grey Wolf, Papa will be saved. Because it's like this in the movies. A good child will definitely be able to defeat the bad guy. What she said was so good. Poplar Fruit wanted to give Kiki a thumbs up. However, this guy's playful nature surged up. He suddenly jumped back a step, bared his fangs and brandished his claws and laughed. Young Luochi, you've been fooled. I'm the real Grey Wolf. Your Papa has been replaced by me. Fong Beibei almost burst out laughing. She covered her mouth and looked at Poplar Fruit's clumsy performance. Kiki was stunned. She saw the little fellow put her hands on her waist, wrinkled her nose, snorted and said, "Gray Wolf, I'm not afraid of you. I've learned the Benben fist that Papa taught me." "I also know Benben fist." Poplar Fruit shouted, sat down, and made a Benben fist on the spot. "You're not allowed to know Benben fist. It was Papa who taught Kiki." Kiki pouted her small mouth and greeted him. In fact, Kiki also knew that her father was playing with her, but it was also very fun. So the father and daughter fought with each other with Benben fist. Of course, Clumsy Fist had nothing to do with fighting. At best, it allowed Chi-Chi to learn some of the martial arts moves. The lethality wasn't strong, but Chi-Chi was still full of vigor when she used it. It was a little interesting. Poplar Fruit just used the posture of Wing Chun to parry, and smiled brightly. From time to time, he would sneak attack his daughter's little fist, and then in a flash, he leaned over and kissed Kiki's little face. Kiki couldn't stop giggling. Little did they know that this funny scene had been recorded by the family photographer Fong Beibei, with her mobile phone. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to *. Chapter 1133. In the end, the video recorded by Fong Beibei was uploaded to Weibo by Poplar Fruit. He happily shared with his fans how Kiki wanted to save her father from Big Bad Wolf. In Fong Beibei's words, Poplar Fruit became complacent because of his daughter's selfless love for him. He restrained himself from posting on Weibo. He really should let his fans see Poplar Fruit's dancing and frivolous appearance. Of course, the fans didn't know that. They were already moved by the loving appearance of the father and daughter when they fought. In particular, Poplar Fruit relied on his good kung fu to constantly bully Kiki. He even secretly kissed Kiki's face. This scene made many of Kiki's fans cry out, "Hey man, why aren't you letting go of our Kiki? If you have the guts, let me do it." Of course, these bad brothers still didn't have as many female fans. They hadn't seen Poplar Fruit show his skills for a long time, never at all. They almost forgot that Poplar Fruit was still the handsome hero with unparalleled kung fu in the past. However, what they were most interested in talking about was still Chi-Chi's skills. "I feel that Kiki's genes are inherited very well," the fans praised. "Not only is she beautiful, but she also practices good kung fu. Look at how her small arms are waving. It's definitely not the kind of fist that ordinary people use. Poplar Fruit has already started to teach Kiki kung fu. Will our world be saved by a beautiful kung fu girl in the future?" Of course, there was a lot of exaggeration and overpraise. However, it was obvious that everyone liked Kiki more and more. I don't know if everyone has noticed one word. In the past, the words that fans used to describe Kiki were mostly words like cute, adorable, and so on. Now there was a slightly adult beauty. It wasn't that anyone had said this on purpose, but Chi-Chi's gradual growth had caused everyone's focus to gradually change. In the past, Kiki was chubby. Her small arms, legs, and face were all very cute, but she was still a few years away from being beautiful. However, after the age of 3, Kiki began to grow taller. Perhaps she had inherited Poplar Fruit's genes. At the age of 3, she was already as tall as a 6-year-old girl. Because she had grown taller, Kiki had also gradually lost weight. This was definitely not Poplar Fruit abusing Kiki by not letting her eat. On the contrary, Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei not only made nutritious and delicious meals for Kiki every day, but they also never let the fridge run out of fruits and milk. However, adequate nutrition only made Kiki grow taller. The little girl didn't seem to grow any fatter. Of course, it wasn't that exaggerated. It was just that she was becoming more and more beautiful. Except for a little baby fat on her face, when she wore the princess dress or the beautiful clothes that Zheng Yujie picked for her. She looked more and more like a beautiful girl. Of course, in Poplar Fruit's view, Kiki was still the little girl from before. She would always be Daddy's darling. During the Spring Festival, Poplar Fruit took Kiki and Fong Beibei back to their hometown. That's right, Fong Beibei also went back on New Year's Eve this year. Although she was a little reluctant, this year meant a lot to Poplar Fruit and Fong Beibei. The Fong family also agreed to let Fong Beibei and Poplar Fruit go back to worship their ancestors. They were going to be part of the Yang family soon, so they had to do something. In their hometown, the statue of Poplar Fruit had already been removed. This was a good thing. Poplar fruit didn't want to attract so much attention and attract so much hatred. However, it had to be said that Yang Rong's actions made everyone know that this small town in Guangdong province was Poplar Fruit's hometown. Even people in his hometown who went out to work and do business would proudly introduce him to others. You know Poplar Fruit, right? He's from our hometown. He's amazing now. Although Poplar Fruit's fame wasn't obvious, the town was not big, and he was too obscure in the past. Therefore, it was not surprising that people were proud of Poplar Fruit. Of course, this was something that Poplar Fruit didn't know. When he returned to his hometown, many neighbors came to visit him, but it was only a little more than usual. In the past, because he made a lot of money, Poplar Fruit didn't feel any change. However, there was one change that made Poplar Fruit feel a little emotional. Yang Rong's attitude towards him was different from before. The new county party secretary didn't dare to casually order Poplar Fruit around. Instead, when he heard the news that Poplar Fruit had returned home, he rushed to the countryside to meet with Poplar Fruit. He wasn't humble, but when he faced Poplar Fruit, he showed a great degree of respect, as if Poplar Fruit was his superior. This wasn't an illusion of Poplar Fruit. Last time, when he called Poplar Fruit carefully and asked if he wanted to mobilize the people in the county to vote for Poplar Fruit felt it. Although he understood why Yang Rong's sudden downfall shocked him, Poplar Fruit was still a little uncomfortable. As the most senior official in his hometown, he was still afraid of him. There was no need at all. Poplar Fruit felt that unless someone touched his bottom line, Poplar Fruit always had the image of a good person. In any case, Poplar Fruit still accompanied him and talked a lot. During the conversation, Poplar Fruit felt that he wasn't like Yang Rong. And he wasn't like his predecessor Chen Longjiang, who was ambitious. Instead, he was more like a practical person. Later, when he chatted with his brother-in-law Yang Chongguan also confirmed Poplar Fruit's guess. He had been in office for more than half a year, but he didn't build roads or plazas as soon as he came. Instead, he visited each town and each street. He started from the people's livelihood and did some practical things. What interested Poplar Fruit more was the scholarship program proposed by the other party. In fact, it wasn't new, but their county had never had such a program before, so the secretary took the initiative to propose it. It was mainly for the high school students in the county who were admitted to famous universities to reward them with a symbolic and practical scholarship. Although the other party didn't mention it, Poplar Fruit took the initiative to say that he was willing to make some contributions to his hometown. He personally donated 5 million yuan, and then donated 3 million yuan on behalf of his family. In total, he donated 8 million yuan to the scholarship fund. After Poplar Fruit made this decision, the county party secretary was so moved that he almost knelt down in front of Poplar Fruit. It should be noted that when he first proposed this idea, there were very few entrepreneurs in the county. In addition, he had no prestige, and he could not coerce the entrepreneurs. Therefore, after much persuasion, it took him 3 months to raise a fund of less than 2 million yuan. This was also the result of the donations from the local businessmen's association. In the end, Poplar Fruit donated 4 times the hard-earned result. His idea was finally realized. After all, even if each person donated 10,000 yuan, 2 million yuan might be used up in 3 or 4 years. Now there was a total of 10 million yuan, which was enough for the reward system to operate for nearly 10 years. Poplar Fruit was a good person, a very good person. This saying was not wrong at all. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to. Chapter 1134. That Chinese New Year was not very peaceful, because Poplar Fruit received a call from Beijing before the Chinese New Year. He won an award. That's right, it was the top 10 characters that touched China. Poplar Fruit was not mentally prepared for that award. After all, it was the top 10 characters that touched China. What did he do to deserve to stand on the podium of the top 10 characters of the year? Voting? Perhaps the public voting did have some effect. Poplar Fruit's fans also went crazy to vote for Poplar Fruit. However, everyone in China knew what the so-called voting was. Then, the only possibility was that the award was an honor given to Poplar Fruit by the country. However, objectively speaking, It was understandable that Poplar Fruit won the award. Because the selection of touching China, the focus can be big or small. Small, like some unknown people around us. They may be doing good deeds day after day for decades, or persevering for their families and loved ones. They are also worthy of our gratitude and respect. The big ones were like space heroes like Liu Xiang, who won the world championship and changed the world's view of China and Asians. Although he didn't do much in the end, he deserved the word moved back then. And like Jean Jing, who used her own body to protect the Olympic flame. They deserved this honor. What about Poplar Fruit? It was the same. Take one aspect for example. Director Zhang and his Olympic team in the year 2008 won the top 10 characters of the year. The reason was that they showed Chinese culture to the world. In terms of showing Chinese culture, how was Poplar Fruit worse than Director Zhang? Whether it was the word-splitting technique or the contributions he made in the translation and literary world, Poplar Fruit really blew the Chinese style all over the world. Of course, there was bound to be controversy. After all, Poplar Fruit was too young and did not have enough experience. It was far from enough. However, it was undeniable that Poplar Fruit could have won the award if the issue of age was ignored. Or to put it this way, if Yang Guo was replaced by a white-haired old man who spent his entire life to make such great achievements and contributions, then there would definitely be no dispute about him receiving the award. In fact, it would be a one-sided cheering for him. At the end of the day, it was still prejudice. Poplar Fruit was young and had made such great achievements and contributions in only a few years. It was only natural that he should be questioned. That was the truth, but also the irony. Regardless, the country gave the award to Poplar Fruit. Poplar Fruit had to go to Beijing to prepare for the award ceremony. That also disrupted his plans of reuniting with his family during the Chinese New Year. The Poplar Tree Year. After Chinese New Year's Eve and the first day of the Chinese New Year, Poplar Fruit drove Fang Beibei and Kiki drove through the night to Year Day. To return the favor, Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei spent 3 days at the Fang's house. Of course, the happiest people were Father and Mother Fang. There was a sudden increase in visits from relatives. It was mainly because Poplar Fruit was becoming more and more famous. Moreover, their favorite child Kiki was also at home. For the past 3 days, Kiki was almost spoiled like a real princess. Whenever there was good food or drinks, Father and Mother Fang would serve her like servants. Even Poplar Fruit did not have the chance to get close to Kiki. Of course, Kiki was also very happy because she also received a super big red packet from Father and Mother Fang. In fact, this red packet was from Poplar Fruit. As Fang Beibei's son-in-law, Yang Guo naturally had to express his gratitude during the Spring Festival. He forcefully stuffed a card worth 100,000 renminbi into his parent-in-law's pocket money. The amount was the maximum amount that Fang Beibei could accept. However, Father Fang had the backbone of a scholar and was unwilling to accept such a big red packet from Poplar Fruit. Of course, Father Fang refused to take back the Poplar Fruit, so he gave it all back to Kiki. Mother Fang was a little reluctant, but she still listened to her father on important matters. Kiki was no longer the 1-year-old child that could be coaxed with a few yuan. She knew what this card represented and what a lot of money meant, so she was a little reluctant to give it to her father. Father Fang and Mother Fang both said that they were giving it to Kiki, so it was even harder for Kiki to return the card. In the end, it was Fang Beibei who stopped Poplar Fruit from throwing a tantrum at Kiki. She said, "All right, Poplar Fruit means well. I told him not to give it to you, but Grandpa and Grandma said that this is the proper etiquette." Etiquette was actually just a small gift. People in the countryside wouldn't be so extravagant as to give a 100,000 yuan card during the Chinese New Year. However, the Yang family felt that Poplar Fruit had earned a lot. If they didn't give him more, they would end up with a bad reputation for being stingy with their in-laws. Moreover, they were going to get married this year, so this card could be considered as a pre-betrothal gift. Poplar Fruit was always a little silly when it came to these things. He felt that his family was right, so he went back to discuss it with Fang Beibei, which led to this scene. "Then it's not wrong for us to give it to Kiki," Mother Fang retorted. She was the main force in the war of words. "It's natural for an old man to give a red packet to his granddaughter. Isn't that right, Kiki?" However, Kiki didn't dare to say anything at this time, because she felt that she didn't do the right thing. She might have made her father angry. Then you shouldn't give the child so much money, Fong Beibei said with a smile to ease the atmosphere. Come Kiki, give me the card. Mom will keep it for you. When you grow up, I'll definitely return it to you. Kiki let go of her hand obediently, but she couldn't help but look at the card in Fong Beibei's hand. That card was equivalent to a lot of Kiki's Barbie dolls and cakes. Little money grubber, what will you do in the future? Fong Beibei couldn't help but laugh. This made Kiki a little embarrassed. However, there was still a problem that hadn't been solved yet. She stood up from her parents' side and threw herself into Poplar Fruit's arms. As she wriggled and acted coquettishly, she used her finger to press the corner of Poplar Fruit's mouth, trying to make him smile. Poplar Fruit, who had a straight face just now, smiled helplessly. He gently pinched the little girl's nose and said gently, "Don't do this in the future. If you need money in the future, you can ask Dad for it. It's not like Dad won't give it to you, right? How can you ask Grandpa and Grandma for so much money?" Stop scolding Kiki. Fong Beibei also scolded him and said, I told you not to give Dad and Mom so much money, but you didn't listen. Can money buy health? Fong Beibei actually meant to beat around the bush and tell Poplar Fruit that in the future, it would be better to buy some supplements or food instead of money. This way, they would be more accepting. Poplar Fruit had lived with Fong Beibei for so long, so of course, he could understand the meaning behind Fong Beibei's words. We don't lack money at home. Father Fong misunderstood. He nodded and said in agreement, Beibei is right. Instead of giving money, why don't you come back to visit us more often? Seeing all of you happy is our greatest happiness. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to asterisk. Chapter 1135. On the 6th day of the new year, Poplar Fruit and his family took a plane to Beijing during the rush hour of the Spring Festival. It was not difficult to book the plane tickets. Poplar Fruit bought a first-class seat that would never be empty. When they arrived in Beijing, Zheng Yujie, who hadn't gone to work in Yangcheng, picked them up. After all, Zheng Yujie was the boss of a publishing house. Other than a workaholic like herself, who else could control her work hours? However, Zheng Yujie did not stay to accompany Poplar Fruit, because she knew that the woman who accompanied Poplar Fruit to the award ceremony would not be her. Instead of feeling sad, she might as well devote all her energy to work. On the third day, Zheng Yujie flew to the United States to discuss the cooperation agreement with Amazon for the new year. The influence of teacher Mo Yan's books on the international market had been greatly weakened. Granny Monroe's books were selling well, but it was not enough to affect Amazon's decision to cooperate with New Translation Road. This year, other domestic publishing giants were eyeing this emerging market for books. Many of them planned to copy New Translation Road's steps and forcibly enter and divide the cake. Amazon had a lot more choices. Therefore, according to the feedback they had collected, they were starting to have some opinions about the terms of the previous cooperation. This time, Zheng Yujie went there mainly to see if Amazon still intended to treat New Translation Road as a strategic partner. Strategic partners would have a lot of support and sales promotion. If they really had a change of heart, New Translation Road's strategic deployment in the new year would change greatly. Zheng Yujie was not afraid of Amazon. She was not worried about parting ways with Amazon. Zheng Yujie and Poplar Fruit had no choice but to start from scratch. However, things were different now. New Translation Road had completely established a reputation around the world. Previously, they had been paying attention to the brand strategy, which was enough to give New Translation Road the ability to start anew and return to the independent publishing industry. Not to mention other things, the logo of New Translation Road and Poplar Fruit's name were enough for them to move around the world unhindered. This was a bit like the Harry Potter series back in the day, where people already had blind trust in J.K. Rowling. As long as it was a book written by her, there was no reason why it would not sell well. In fact, the first book after the Harry Potter series, excluding the books related to Harry Potter, Casual Vacancy, was a great success. The second book, The Cuckoo's Call, even under a different pen name, was still selling well. Of course, This was also related to Ms. Rowling's own strength. However, Poplar Fruit's translation skills and the number and quality of the fantasy novels published by New Translation Road Publishing House had indeed given readers all over the world a psychological hint. Choosing me is definitely the right choice. Since they had this influence, the new company could establish itself. They did not even have to worry about Amazon falling out with them. This was not in line with Amazon's philosophy. After all, they were only doing e-commerce channels and not publishing houses. The library was just a very small project. In front of the sales volume of New Translation Road's books, they had no reason not to cooperate with New Translation Road. Moreover, it was actually better for New Translation Road to be independent because this way, its books did not only need to be sold through Amazon's channels. It could use channels all over the world. Of course, there were also risks in making rash changes. Although the higher-ups of New Translation Road had already discussed it during the meeting, Poplar Fruit generally did not attend, and had already started preparing silently. Who could predict whether they would fail because of changes? Pang Yu had raised such a concern, but Zheng Yujia's next sentence filled everyone with confidence. What's there to be afraid of? We have the capital to make a comeback. If we fail, we will just go back to 2 years ago and start all over again. The so-called capital was mainly referring to Poplar Fruit. Not to mention the sales volume of this guy's translated books. With his translation speed and translation skills, he was equivalent to 7 or 8 pillars of other publishing houses in New Translation Road. If this was not stable, then there was nothing more stable. Of course, this still depended on how Zheng Yujia went to Amazon this time. At 8 p.m. on February 27th, Central TV officially started the live broadcast of this year's Touching China Awards ceremony. Of course, Poplar Fruit and the others also attended, but it was not too grand. For example, Fong Beibei did not wear a heavy evening gown. They were young people, so it was understandable for them to dress youthful and energetic. These were not the main points, because in fact, the camera would not frequently be focused on Poplar Fruit and the others. However, every time the camera focused on their table, Poplar Fruit's fans on Weibo would be excited for a while because they saw the handsome Poplar Fruit and the beautiful and cute Kiki. Today, Kiki was very quiet because of the occasion. She sat obediently beside her father. In the eyes of the netizens, this was another kind of charm that attracted them. The award ceremony was conducted in an orderly manner under the auspices of the two big hosts of Central TV. The program's ratings had dropped a lot in recent years, but this time, it had improved a lot. This improvement was mainly due to Poplar Fruit's fans. To them, what they really wanted to see was Poplar Fruit scenes. However, for Poplar Fruit, he sat below the stage and did not look forward to receiving the award. That was because watching one touching story after another was actually a kind of baptism for him. He really treated himself as an ordinary audience member. He listened sincerely, clapped hard, and shed tears of gratitude. Once, the cameraman even unknowingly took him as a touched audience member and captured him on camera. It also appeared on thousands of televisions. This scene was just a flash, but it was still discovered by Poplar Fruit's fans and they quickly took screenshots. However, most of the ordinary audience did not realize that the handsome young man who wiped the tears from the corner of his eyes in the camera was actually one of today's award winners. Poplar Fruit did not care what others thought of him. He was just being himself. Moreover, Poplar Fruit did not know that his words and actions had affected Kiki, who was sitting beside him. Kiki also watched seriously. Maybe she did not understand it, but she would remember it. One day, she would understand and germinate. Finally, it was Poplar Fruit's turn. Under the guidance of the staff, Poplar Fruit waited backstage. He used to be a supermodel. Because of his stunning performance at the Bali Fashion Week, the world began to recognize and accept models from China. He was a student and scholar. His talent was favored by Harvard University, and the theories he researched made the world redefine the Chinese language. It was also the beginning of the Chinese language to the world. Teacher Jing Yi Dan stood in front of the stage, using gentle and pleasant Mandarin to begin a powerful introduction. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to *. Chapter 1136. He is a translator. Among his translations, 2 Nobel Prize winners walked out. He also made the world go crazy for Chinese web novels. He is also a teacher, or rather a philanthropist. He initiated the remote teaching model and public welfare activities, which allowed better and more equal education to reach poor areas. He is also a great hero in people's hearts. He dared to fight 8 terrifying armed thugs with his bare hands and saved many lives. It is difficult to define him clearly because he has always been refreshing people's understanding of him. He also used his tireless efforts and achievements to impact the hearts of the people. After Jing Yidan teacher's introduction, there was a 7-minute video introduction. In this video, some of it was recorded by the TV station after Poplar Fruit returned to Guangzhou. Most of it was recorded by Central TV from Higashiyama University, the Remote Teaching Association, and other channels. It was a more comprehensive introduction of Poplar Fruit's glorious deeds. Of course, Central TV's tear-jerking editing techniques were already at the pinnacle of perfection. This video was also very compelling. The viewers could not help but open their mouths in shock. Poplar Fruit was also a little surprised when he saw it. This was because he knew that the video was not false. However, he never thought that he was actually this outstanding. Or rather, Poplar Fruit never thought about it. This was because he never looked back and was always looking forward. Let's welcome Poplar Fruit. As Jing Yidan Master's voice fell, Yang Guo walked out from the left end of the high zigzag stage. So young. Amidst the vigorous applause, there were always a few such exclamations. Indeed, as long as Poplar Fruit wore a slim fit suit, his youthful and handsome face would be even more prominent. Kiki in the audience had been looking forward to it for a long time. When she saw her father come out, she clapped with all her might. This support was not small. Kiki's white and tender little face was flushed with excitement. Poplar Fruit walked down the stairs with steady steps. The modeling training he received was already engraved in his bones. Although he did not have the catwalk of a model, his body and steps had an indescribable charm. In front of the stage, Poplar Fruit bowed to the audience before he came to Bai Yinsong's tea table on the right. The two sat opposite each other with their bodies slightly tilted to the audience. Yang Guo, I've always been curious about a question. Maybe it's also a question that most of the audience wants to ask. How did you achieve so many achievements in academia, translation, public service, and other fields in just a few years? Teacher Bai Yinsong directly threw out the question without any small talk. Poplar Fruit smiled faintly and said, I think on one hand, I rely on talent. My language talent and learning ability are indeed very strong. On the other hand, it is hard work. Those who are familiar with basketball should know that Kobe once said, Do you know what Los Angeles looks like at 4 in the morning? Actually, it's the same for me. I clearly remember what it looks like at 4 in the morning in Guangzhou. Bai Yinsong took the lead and led the audience to applaud Poplar Fruit's words. Why did you want to come back to your motherland to continue academic research in the field of languages? You should know that when you stood on the stage of the Bali Fashion Week, it could be said that you were very successful. Even the reporters said that you had made a peak performance. Why did you choose to withdraw from the rapids and turn to the boring research work that doesn't attract much attention? Bai Yinsong asked. Because of interest. Poplar Fruit laughed heartily and said, Becoming a supermodel is actually to fulfill a promise to a friend. I have already worked hard and achieved good results. That is enough. Besides, academic research is not boring for me. On the contrary, because of my love for languages and translation, I find it more interesting. People have to take advantage of their youth to do what they want to do and what they like to do. Only then will they not have any regrets in life. Bai Yinsong nodded and asked, While you're doing your research, you've also started a charity event like remote teaching. As far as I know, your personal donation has already exceeded 200 million. Why are you willing to donate so much money that you've worked so hard to earn? Poplar Fruit pondered for a moment and said, There is no complicated reason. In fact, our family's pursuit of money is not that high. It's not that we don't have it, but it is enough for us. A few 100,000 or a few million is enough for us to live a good life. If the rest of the money is piled up in the bank, it is just a string of numbers. But if it is used to help others, it can make more people live a better life. When I discussed it with my girlfriend, we both felt that it was a good thing to donate to charity, so we did it. She is now doing a charity activity for stray pets. On the one hand, she is saving them. On the other hand, she is helping them find families that can adopt and care for them. Poplar Fruit smiled and said. He gently turned his head and looked at Fong Beibei. The director accurately gave Fong Beibei a shot. Last March at the Kunming train station, you faced 8 armed criminals alone and bravely rushed forward. What were your thoughts at that time? Were you afraid? Bai Yensong asked. Poplar Fruit shook his head without hesitation and said, No, I never thought of being afraid. Because when the crowd began to stir, the first thing I thought of was to protect my daughter, girlfriend, and friends who were traveling with me. First, I solved the crisis in the temporary waiting room at the station. Then I had time to fight with the thugs in the station hall. Poplar Fruit smiled and said, I knew that there were 4 or 5 thugs at that time. It was difficult for 2 fists to fight against 4 hands. There was a certain possibility of injury. But I also knew that if I didn't go and entangle them, allowing them to continue like this, there would definitely be more casualties. So I still went up. Poplar Fruit's words once again received thunderous applause. After the applause stopped, Bai Yensong continued to ask, Poplar Fruit, you are not even 30 years old, and you have achieved so many excellent achievements. So, what dreams do you have for the future? Or, what heights do you want to reach? This question was a bit difficult, and Poplar Fruit could not say it too lightly. However, these questions had been discussed before, so Poplar Fruit just thought for a moment and said, Actually, I have always had a dream, which is to let more excellent literary works of our country go abroad and let the whole world like Chinese culture. But it is very difficult to realize this dream, and it is not only possible for me to achieve it alone. It needs more writers, linguists, and translators to work together. The popularity of Chinese online novels promoted by New Translation Road Publishing House is one of our efforts. My research on the theory of translation and the theory of Chinese learning is also one of our efforts. Poplar Fruit said calmly, So we can't say that we have succeeded, but we have seen a promising dawn on the road to realizing our dreams. In the future, of course, I will continue to work hard and move toward this goal. Looking for monthly votes. Looking for recommendations. Chapter 1137. When teacher Jing Yidan finished reading the award speech, the pillar-like big screen seemed to be pulled down like a curtain. The 2 golden words Poplar Fruit shone in front of the audience. Poplar Fruit walked to the front desk and received the trophy and flowers from 2 primary school students wearing red scarves. People on the internet and in front of the TV also applauded. In front of another TV, a thin man was sitting in front of the TV with a lunchbox. He had forgotten to eat because he was watching Poplar Fruit's award ceremony. The bean sprouts inside were a little cold. Uncle Xie, what do you think? What a good gimmick. Inviting one of the top 10 figures of the year, who touched China to participate in our show. You have to know that he's not an ordinary person. Even if we put aside his previous experience as a model, he's still a public figure. Teacher, he began to nag in front of producer Xie again. Producer Xie's age was actually very different from his appearance. It was still okay now, but in the past, no matter how others looked at him, they would feel that he was a generation older than them. So as everyone in the station called him that, the title of Uncle Xie was dropped. Don't be in a hurry to eat. Teacher, he laughed and said, You're always eating takeout. Why don't I treat you to a drink outside? He wanted to take advantage of the opportunity of Poplar Fruit receiving the award to persuade the hesitant producer Xie. No, I have to work overtime later. Teacher, I say. What's the relationship between you and Poplar Fruit? Why do you keep recommending him? Producer Xie raised his eyebrows and asked doubtfully. Producer Xie naturally wouldn't question Teacher He's character since they had been colleagues for decades. He just wanted to give himself some peace and quiet. What kind of relationship? Didn't he appear on my show once before? Then I got to know this young man very well, especially his daughter. Did you see her on TV just now? She's grown up into a big girl. Teacher, he said long-windedly. Who knows how many people on the internet are looking forward to seeing the father and daughter on the show. I know what you're saying. Producer Sia sighed and said. Aren't I hesitating? Why are you hesitating? Mister, he asked like a curious baby. Producer Sia nudged him and said with a smile. Okay. Don't try to pry into my intentions. Before the final name list is confirmed, I won't tell anyone. Hurry up. Go and prepare for your program. Anyway, I already know your opinion. I didn't say no, right? I'll let you know as soon as I make a decision. Teacher, he had no choice but to nod and leave Producer Sia's office. A long time after Teacher he left, Producer Sia put down the lunchbox in his hand and took out a stack of documents from the drawer on the other side. There was a piece of paper with a few names written on it. Poplar Fruit's name was also on the list. It's hard to choose a girl's family. Producer Sia sighed softly. In fact, in the settings of Where Are We Going, Daddy? The number of boys was more than the number of girls. The second season was a special case because Chow Gu brought 2 children, 1 boy and 1 girl. And as a result, the ratio of boys to girls was evened out. Later, it turned out that the ratio of boys to girls was not a good thing because little boys were more lively after all. And if there were more girls, it would not be easy to allocate their share of the screen time. This season, Producer Sia pondered for a long time and decided to use a more daring combination of 4 boys and 1 girl. Just like in Run, Brother. A little red in the midst of a lot of green. This would highlight the characteristics of the show more. In this way, the choice of the girl had to be very, very careful. Because she was the only girl character, if she did not shine, the entire show would collapse. It was also because of this reason that Producer Sia had been having a headache and had not decided on the final name list. In his mind, the best girl character should be as cute, sensible, and liked as Huang Duo in the second season, but it would be best if she was not as old as Duo. Of course, this was just a thought. He did not have many choices. How could there be such a perfect candidate? Poplar Fruit and his daughter, Kiki, had actually been in Producer Sia's sights since the online discussion and Teacher He's recommendation last year. To be honest, Producer Sia also felt that Poplar Fruit's father was impeccable. He watched the show where Poplar Fruit went on the fast track, and how Poplar Fruit accidentally entered the scene of the Korean variety show, Running_Man. He realized that Poplar Fruit was more suitable for variety shows because he had a glib tongue, had experienced legends, and was able to enjoy himself. Most importantly, Poplar Fruit knew how to share. He would not deliberately hog the screen time, and would even fight for the other guests' screen time. This was a very good quality of variety shows. If this show was called Daddy Daddy, and was a show with fathers as the main characters, then Producer Sia would definitely choose Poplar Fruit without a doubt. However, the father was only a supporting character in this show. The real main characters were the cute children, so he had to focus on whether Kiki was suitable. Producer Sia asked the staff to collect a lot of photos and videos of Kiki. Other than the photos from other media outlets, most of them were taken from Poplar Fruit's Weibo and filled up a USB flash drive. If Poplar Fruit did not know and knew that someone was spying on Kiki like this, he would definitely beat him up. More than 2 years ago, Kiki was still a little shy when she participated in the fast track. However, under Poplar Fruit's guidance, she performed very well. However, that was more than 2 years ago. Who knew what would happen now? Now Kiki was still very cute in the videos posted on Poplar Fruit's Weibo. The warmth between the father and daughter made many netizens envious. However, this had little to do with whether or not she could participate in the show, because children would be very natural in front of their families. However, if the environment changed, it might be really difficult for them to adapt. It was not that Kiki was not good. Kiki was very good, and Producer Sia was willing to give such a cute little girl a chance. However, there was now a choice in front of him, which made it difficult for Producer Sia to choose. Sia Kelly and his daughter. Sia Kelly was a foreigner, but he had been a show host in Taiwan. He spoke Chinese very well, which was very attractive in publicity. His daughter was of mixed Chinese and Canadian descent. She was very beautiful and was 2 years older than Kiki. Therefore, she would be more sensible. One must know that if Kiki really recorded the show, She would only be a little over 4 years old. She would be about the same as Angela when she was young. Angela was difficult to please, not derogatory, which made her father and the show's crew very troubled. Besides, Xia Kelly was a foreigner. Maybe he could expand the influence of the show to the world. In this way, it seemed that he had another advantage. Now was not the time to finalize the list. Producer Xia wanted to wait and think about it again. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to *. Chapter 1138. Although school was about to start, after the award ceremony, Poplar Fruit still stayed in Beijing for a week. One of the reasons was because he wanted to participate in the Date with Lu Yu interview program. The program was recorded in the Shijingshan area of Beijing, and he also needed to strengthen his relationship with the Beijing Education Department and several university professors. There was no need to elaborate on the interview program. After all, it was just Poplar Fruit's previous experience. On the other hand, the communication between Beijing and the Ministry of Education was more interesting. Under the promotion of the state apparatus, Tanzania, Congo, and China established an educational cooperation. Yang Guo did not know if there was an exchange of interests, but the speed was very fast. In just a few months, they had already established a few distance education service points in Congo. This was what Poplar Fruit mentioned. According to the local environment and actual situation, small service points similar to highway service areas were built near poor villages. Not only did they provide free remote education services, but they also invited the medical team sent by the state and other NGOs to be stationed there. Safety was a big issue, but after negotiating with the United Nations and the Congo government, the peacekeeping force and the government army would also take responsibility for protecting the safety of civilians. These similar service points would gradually spread throughout the Congo in the next 1 or 2 years. Whether it was education, medical assistance, or the Congo government's own stability of the country, it could play a very good role. In fact, it was not just Congo. According to Poplar Fruit's understanding, Sudan, Cameroon, Kenya, Guinea, Angola, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and so on from this year onwards, countries were preparing to cooperate with each other in education. This could be seen from the path of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs' visit to Africa last month. Of course, Poplar Fruit didn't know much about the political aspect, and he didn't think much about it. After all, Poplar Fruit was not a diplomat or a government official, so there was no need for him to worry about it. Yang Guo, on the other hand, was happy for Mukaru. After the winter break, Mukaru flew back to Tanzania with China's support team. After that, he was busy between Tanzania and Congo. He played the role of a bridge, but Mukaru still did his best to help the people of his hometown. After chatting with Mukaru online for a while, Mukaru started to treat Yang Guo as a great benefactor of Bodhisattva. In order to repay Mukaru's gratitude, Poplar Fruit also agreed to record a complete Chinese language course for Mukaru, who preferred Chinese culture. It was still using his new theory, but it had to be taught in the local language. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit had learned several African languages in the past few months, such as Kiswahili, Lingala, and Hausa. These languages were the most commonly used languages in the African continent. Knowing these languages, French, English, and Arabic, one would be able to move freely in the various cities in Africa. Of course, with Higashiyama University's meager background, it was impossible to find these unpopular language learning materials. Fortunately, Poplar Fruit had a good relationship with the professors at Beijing International Studies University, so he asked them for some materials. Together with some training materials from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, it was enough for Poplar Fruit to learn. Actually, learning a language at Poplar Fruit's level was not as painful as learning other languages. After all, languages were basically the same. For example, Hausa was a Semitic language similar to Arabic. Lingala and Kiswahili were both Bantu languages. Although there were definitely some differences, as long as one learned one, the other would become very simple. It was like learning Cantonese after learning Sichuan. It was just a walk between different dialects. Moreover, these small countries in Africa didn't have as long a history as China. Naturally, their languages wouldn't be as developed as China's. In the vocabulary, The words he invented were only a small part. Most of it was taken up by French, English, and other foreign words. In this way, for poplar fruit, the cost of learning was further reduced. In addition to these omnivorous foods, poplar fruit's main reason for staying in Beijing was to celebrate Fang Beibei's birthday. When it came to choosing a birthday gift, poplar fruit certainly would not stupidly give Fang Beibei a trophy that touched the top 10 people in China as a gift. It was not some NBA championship ring, right? For this gift, poplar fruit had been preparing since the beginning of the year. As for what he gave, it was a little sweetness between the couple. He did not want to say it out loud so that everyone would be jealous. However, on the last night in Beijing, just as poplar fruit was about to go home, poplar fruit received a call from Professor Mills in the United States. Poplar fruit was still very respectful to this mentor on his path of giving speeches. He put down the clothes in his hand and left them to Fang Beibei and the troublemaker Kiki. Poplar fruit went to the hotel corridor to answer the call. In fact, Professor Mills did not look for poplar fruit himself. He was only asked by someone to invite poplar fruit. Invite? The biggest friendship between poplar fruit and Professor Mills originated from speeches. It also developed because of speeches. Previously on the plane, Professor Mills once said that the founder of TED, Mr. Anderson, was his good friend. Professor Mills was asked by Mr. Anderson to invite poplar fruit to this year's TED conference. There was no need to go into too much detail about TED. After all, in recent years, the educational channels of several video websites, or rather, the public lecture channels, had a lot of content filled with videos of TED Talks. The Chinese people's understanding of TED was no longer as ignorant as it was a few years ago. However, many people didn't know that although TED videos were updated from time to time, the most exciting speech videos were definitely from the TED conference in March every year. Speakers, thinkers, or leaders from all over the world gave their speeches. Poplar fruit liked watching TED speech videos very much, not only because he needed to learn how to give speeches, but also because there were many very interesting and even valuable ideas in them. Poplar fruit was a little surprised to be invited by Mr. Anderson. However, after Professor Mills explained a little, poplar fruit also understood why Mr. Anderson invited him. You are the founder of future education. This model of distance education is really amazing. Although we advocate face-to-face exchange education, there is no doubt that your education model does indeed allow some poor and backward countries to enjoy the benefits of education. Professor Mills said to poplar fruit. Of course, he knew about poplar fruit's distance education. When poplar fruit asked him for advice before, they talked about the content of his speech. Poplar fruit's speech videos in school were also translated by some international students and had received a lot of attention. Perhaps Mr. Anderson also learned about him from Professor Mills. However, poplar fruit did not know that the title of the founder of future education was not an exaggeration by Professor Mills. It was a title that the American academic community gave to poplar fruit. Come on, Leon, the TED conference needs your beautiful ideas. Let's use ideas to change the world together. Professor Mills persuaded. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to asterisk. Chapter 1139. Before it was time to leave for California, poplar fruit started to study the script of his TED speech. By right, poplar fruit's speech should have no problems. Moreover, he had gone through 100 lecture tours last year, so he could just copy it. However, a TED speech was different. It only had 18 minutes to express one's thoughts. It was not a lecture tour that could easily last 1 or 2 hours. Moreover, poplar fruit's target audience was mainly people from Western countries. Although the language was not a problem, it was obvious that Chinese speech logic would not be popular. Therefore, poplar fruit had to make a lot of changes and preparations. On the weekend, poplar fruit and Kiki took Gold and Big Motor for a walk in the neighborhood park. Zheng Yujie had encountered some problems in the negotiations with Amazon in the United States. Therefore, she stayed in the United States for the time being, and was prepared to discuss with other channels. Therefore, poplar fruit had to go to her house to pick up Big Motor. After all, it was not a good idea for a nanny to take care of it all the time. The nanny would only take care of Big Motor's daily needs. She would definitely not take it out for walks like the owner. Kiki was the happiest when Big Motor came home. That was because she had another gentle and powerful ride. Although Big Motor was a little old, it had been well taken care of by Zheng Yujie for the past year. It could even carry Fong Bebe, let alone Kiki. Moreover, although it looked bigger than Gold, its fluffy fur and lazy appearance did not make people feel afraid. In comparison, the energetic Gold was a good playmate. However, it was not a good ride. When Kiki wanted to ride Big Motor on its back, Gold wriggled restlessly. This made Kiki very unhappy. I don't like Gold anymore. Gold is not obedient. Kiki pouted and complained to her father. Poplar Fruit smiled in his heart. He knew the reason. He thought to himself, it's mainly because you've grown up. Only Big Motor had a strong physique and a gentle personality. Otherwise, who would be able to carry him? Jean Z is exhausted. However, in the evening, Yang Guo received a phone call and her brows furrowed. Zheng Mingsheng wanted to see him. Why did Zheng Mingsheng want to see him? Poplar Fruit was not stupid enough to think that Zheng Mingsheng wanted to see him, because he received the award for touching the top 10 people of China. Although Poplar Fruit returned from Beijing, there was no need for a provincial governor and governor like Zheng Mingsheng to meet Poplar Fruit for such a small matter. There was no friendship between them. It seemed that they had not met many times. It was even less than the number of times that Poplar Fruit saw Commander He Jioming at Big Brother He's house. The latter cared for Poplar Fruit very much. On the one hand, it was because of the close relationship between Poplar Fruit and He Wenjua. On the other hand, it was also because of Poplar Fruit's good skills and contributions to the defense of the motherland and the safety of the people's property. Suddenly receiving a notice from Zheng Mingsheng's secretary, Poplar Fruit's mood was uneasy. He did not know why. Perhaps it was because he was Zheng Yujie's father. With such a nervous mood, Poplar Fruit was a little absent-minded when he had a meeting with several students from the remote teaching club at school the next morning. It was in the afternoon when they arrived at the provincial party committee. Zheng Mingsheng was very busy. In front of Poplar Fruit, there was a municipal party secretary who rushed over to report to Zheng Mingsheng. After entering, the secretary did not make tea for Poplar Fruit. Instead, he closed the door and left. Zheng Mingsheng looked up at Poplar Fruit, pointed to the sofa chair in front of his desk, and said, "Sit." His tone was neither cold nor warm, but it faintly revealed the authority of a high-ranking official. Poplar Fruit sat down a little awkwardly, and then he was examined by Zheng Mingsheng for 3 minutes. In these 3 minutes, Yang Guo's mood was like riding a roller coaster, from apprehension to violent upheaval. But miraculously he suddenly calmed down in the end. Not only his expression, but Poplar Fruit's eyes also became calm. He did not know why, but he did not seem to be afraid of Zheng Mingsheng. Instead, he had a calmness of block soldiers with arms, water with earthware. After Poplar Fruit's expression changed, Zheng Mingsheng looked deeply at Poplar Fruit, and he sighed in his heart. Quite a good young man. Zheng Mingsheng did not regret it, but he still had some regrets. He thought about how Poplar Fruit appeared in front of the Zheng family like a hothead, and how the Zheng family disdained him. Deng Baoyan even ran to Poplar Fruit's hotel and made a scene. However, later they found out that their daughter and the other party were just friends. The so-called boyfriend and girlfriend relationship was fake. At that time, Poplar Fruit should not have a girlfriend, right? However, they did not expect that the hothead at that time would grow to such a level in just a few years. Although they did not go into politics or business, they could not stop Poplar Fruit's rapid academic progress. The Zheng family could look down on him and secretly scold him for being a lowly scholar. However, Poplar Fruit's achievement of being received by the country's leaders and being awarded by Central TV's Touching China's Top 10 awards, the Zheng family could no longer ignore Poplar Fruit. Yes, in the Zheng family's eyes, Poplar Fruit was as outstanding as a hot steamed bun. Even Deng Baoyan, who looked down on Poplar Fruit the most, began to think that Poplar Fruit met the Zheng family's criteria for a son-in-law. Unfortunately, you looked down on him back then. Now Poplar Fruit is already taken. During the new year, when Zheng Yujie was not present, the Zheng family discussed whether they should let Zheng Yujie take the initiative. Poplar fruit was a good match for Zheng Yujie. More importantly, Zheng Yujie liked poplar fruit. The child's happiness is more important than anything else. This was said by Zheng Mingxing's sister-in-law. This was a world of difference from what she said when she looked down on poplar fruit. However, just as everyone was praising poplar fruit, Zheng Mingxing clearly opposed Zheng Yujie and poplar fruit being together. Old Master Zheng Huakong was still alive, but he rarely made any decisions for the family. Zheng Mingxing had become the head of the family, and his words were like an imperial edict that could not be disobeyed. Zheng Mingxing opposed poplar fruit? Deng Baoyan was surprised. When everyone was against it, it was Zheng Mingxing who was willing to give Yang Guo a chance. In fact, he didn't agree, didn't oppose, and didn't interfere. Now, Zheng Mingxing's attitude had changed 180 degrees. What was the reason? Only Zheng Mingxing knew the reason. Because it was impossible between poplar fruit and Zheng Yujie. Zheng Mingxing, who had been in charge of politics in Guangdong province for 2 years, knew the relationship between poplar fruit and Zheng Yujie best. It was absolutely clean. No one had crossed the line. Zheng Mingxing even asked people to investigate the whereabouts of poplar fruit. In the communication between poplar fruit and Zheng Yujie, except for the more frequent work contact, the two basically had few private contacts. If there was really an affair, how could it be like this? Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations. Chapter 1140. If it could be done, how could he object? To be honest, when he came to Guangdong province, poplar fruit had not yet become the general trend. Although he was a little famous, he was still not in the Zheng family's eyes. However, Zheng Mingxing still had a good impression of poplar fruit at that time. He was a down-to-earth scholar, not impetuous, and had a good height and appearance. Such a boy was rare. However, no matter how good he was, he could not become the son-in-law of the Zheng family. It was not that Zheng Mingxing did not like him, but the fact that poplar fruit already had a girlfriend made Zheng Mingxing very conflicted. At that time, Zheng Mingxing had just come to Guangdong province, and it was not easy for him to control the officialdom of Guangdong province, so he did not spare the energy to deal with poplar fruit and his daughter's matter. Then, when he took a nap, poplar fruit had already grown to such a level. Not to mention whether he was a hero or not. Just his word splitting was enough to make poplar fruit a national expert and scholar, and the kind that enjoyed special subsidies from the state council. Of course, poplar fruit did not have this benefit yet. After all, he was too young. Damn the age discrimination, wasn't it? It was also because of this reason that even Zheng Mingxing had to take poplar fruit's influence seriously. However, poplar fruit was still the same as before, and his relationship with his girlfriend was very good. This was obvious to all the people in the country. The relationship between poplar fruit and Fang Beibei had gone from all kinds of controversies to an immortal couple in the eyes of the people now. This also meant that his daughter was out of the picture. Even if Zheng Yujie did not give up, Zheng Mingxing did not want his daughter to be someone else's mistress, or to break up poplar fruit and Fang Beibei, causing both sides to be scolded. Poplar fruit could not bear it, and the Zheng family could not bear it either. So today, Zheng Mingxing took time out of his busy schedule to find this brat and start a showdown. You should persuade Yujie. Don't let her continue to be stubborn with her family. She's not young anymore. If she continues to be entangled with you, it won't be good for anyone. Zheng Mingxing looked at poplar fruit's young face, and said these words with heartache. Yes, he couldn't force poplar fruit to cut off contact with Zheng Yujie. That was impossible. Not to mention the value created by the new translation road. Its influence in the world made countries look askance. Last year, several major departments in the country had put on a demonstration of the new translation route. Even Zheng Mingxing, as her father, could not interfere with Zheng Yujie's company. The only solution was to let Zheng Yujie let go herself, and only poplar fruit could do this. Zheng Yujie was stubborn. Even if Zheng Mingxing tried to persuade her, it was useless. Once she decided on something, she would do it without looking back. If he tried to persuade her, it would only anger Zheng Yujie and make her even more stubborn. Poplar fruit was different. If poplar fruit could be more resolute, maybe Zheng Yujie would really let go. Although it would break her heart, who didn't have such a growth experience. Even if it was broken, it could still be fixed. It might not be perfect, but it was only marriage and love. In the few aristocratic families in Beijing, which child's marriage and love were perfect? Poplar Fruit was silent. From the moment Zheng Mingxing opened his mouth, he had been silent. Zheng Mingxing even put down his arrogance as the provincial party secretary to Poplar Fruit to analyze what kind of pain Zheng Yujie would face if Poplar Fruit let Zheng Yujie drag on like this. On one hand, it was the coercion from her family. On the other hand, it was the strange looks from the outside world. But most of all, it was the harm that Poplar Fruit and Fang Beibei's happiness brought to Zheng Yujie. Poplar Fruit did not listen to any of this. His silence and unmoving eyes concealed the fluctuations in his heart. Zheng Yujie was a name that held a lot of weight in Poplar Fruit's heart. Although it was not as important as Fang Beibei, it was not as simple as an ordinary female friend. Her uniqueness surpassed all the women around the same age as Poplar Fruit except for Fang Beibei. In other words, Poplar Fruit actually had feelings for Zheng Yujie. Humans were not plants. Poplar Fruit was not a saint who would abandon his feelings for the country. Zheng Yujie's love for him had always been naked. Even after 4 years, this love had not faded. Instead, because of the precipitation of time, because of Poplar Fruit's rejection and attacks, it had become more mellow. However, even if Poplar Fruit admitted that he did have feelings for Zheng Yujie, it would not change anything. With Yangguo's personality, she didn't allow herself to be half-hearted in her relationship. She also didn't allow herself to hurt Fang Beibei, because of her half-heartedness. Perhaps this relationship was a mistake from the very beginning. However, when he thought of having a showdown with Zheng Yujie, Poplar Fruit felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. Although he suppressed it very well, it was undeniable that this kind of pain was a little like the heart-wrenching pain when Lu Yunran left on a rainy night. Why is this? Poplar Fruit shook his head self-mockingly in his heart. Perhaps it was a man's inherent weakness. Since ancient times, whether it was the nobles, generals, ministers, or commoners, all men wanted to embrace all the beauty in their arms, especially beautiful women. Although Poplar Fruit could use feelings to ward off the desire in his heart, he knew that it was wrong to do so. On the one hand, it would hurt Fang Beibei, the girl he loved the most. On the other hand, wouldn't it hurt Zheng Yujie? Poplar Fruit could not give Zheng Yujie the love she wanted, and he could not give her the status she needed after loving her. Even without mentioning these, Poplar Fruit could not bear to see her look at him in a daze again and again as he left. Poplar Fruit never dared to look back. Ahem. Zheng Mingxing deliberately coughed to wake Poplar Fruit from his chaotic thoughts. He looked at Poplar Fruit with a somewhat unfriendly gaze. This hateful brat, how dare he be distracted in front of me? If it were not for Poplar Fruit's special status, Zheng Mingxing would have slapped him to death and let him know the consequences of being distracted in front of the provincial secretary. Poplar Fruit came back to his senses. He looked at Zheng Mingxing and continued to listen to his persuasion. Zheng Mingxing was indeed eloquent, but even if he had a glib tongue, the balance in Poplar Fruit's heart still needed to be tilted. I understand. Poplar Fruit suddenly said, taking advantage of the time when Zheng Mingxing was tired and drinking water to interrupt. And Zheng Mingxing signaled him to say it. Poplar Fruit looked at Zheng Mingxing seriously and said, when Yujie comes back, I will explain it to her clearly and not delay her happiness. Poplar Fruit did not want to say too much. He did not need to report to Zheng Mingxing how he was going to tell Zheng Yujie. He had not thought of it yet. But Zheng Mingxing was already satisfied. What he needed was Poplar Fruit's decision. He also knew that Poplar Fruit was a man of his words. Looking for monthly votes, looking for recommendations greater than or equal to asterisk, that you're tuning into the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.